Yes, I'm just gonna use one line, so I don't. Okay. Okay. Oh, right. Okay. 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 It's not for typos. No. Yeah. Yeah. That's some of those too.
Anything particularly notable?
High five.
We'll go ahead and call to order the May 18th, 2026 meeting of the Newton School Committee. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. As usual, we have Emily Legaspi, a fifth grader from Underwood, who's reciting for us. Come on up. Her principal tells us she is a fantastic role model in her classroom, both as a hardworking student and as a kind friend. Emily enjoys reading, playing lacrosse, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and spending time with friends. Thank you. Go ahead and start when you're ready. No obligation to stand, but if you'd like.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Want to share anything about your school? You can. Or yourself?
One thing I want to say about my school is that everybody there is really kind. Yeah.
It's a pretty good thing. Thank you. Great job. Right, we will move to public comment for this evening. Do we have? Go online. Hold please, we'll check the sign up. None? Okay. All right. So then moving to discussion items this evening, we'll start with the superintendent's update, but I would like to note that we will move the presentation from LPAC that is on the agenda tonight to the fall at their request.
Okay. Hi, everyone. First, I just want to thank all the incredible parents and staff members, principals, and students who joined the school committee and I in the Memorial Day parade this past Sunday. It is apparently the first time in many, many decades that the school system was participating, and we would like to thank all the parade organizers and the parade committee for giving us such a lovely float for all of our mascots. And the kids had a really good time. Thank you, Cabot's Ice Cream, for all the sweet treats at the end. I think it's going to be a really good tradition each year. And thank you, school committee, for coming out in force to join the kids. I only have one update tonight. We have a really long agenda. I just want to make everybody aware of that, and a lot of great guest stars tonight. But over the last several years, we've been designing the Math Pathways program, which we presented to you officially in several parts over the last few months, most notably and periodically since January. Information sessions were held for families. It was the best attended parent information session that we've held all year. And assessments as part of the process of pathway placement have been conducted at this time at our middle schools. And those results went out to families with specific scores in Aspen and in Parent Square and translated for folks who needed that in other different languages. And I just want to remind everyone that we are in a transitional time on the way to the goal, which was a more rigorous mathematics curriculum for the entire system. And we have some misalignment for our schools based on what the rest of Metro West provides for students. And we are trying to build that system. The system is systeming while we are trying to make changes. And so what that means is that there's no easy way for us to simply go like this and all of the grades of math change and all of the curriculum is implemented. So we also have elementary educators who have been shouldering a humongous lift with our literacy curriculum that went into play back in 2023. So we had to choose very carefully what things were rolled out first. And there was a lot of feedback from this committee and the community about needing to provide more personalized education for all types of learners around mathematics. My belief is that the decision to implement the math program in this budget season, while hard with a lot of trade-offs, was because that vision is what everyone is driving towards for all of our curriculum areas. And so as a first step, a transitional one, trying to both implement new compacted curriculum starting next year in our middle schools, but also provide some acceleration opportunities for students who are ready. We gave these assessments and that information went out. This is the third districts I've implemented math pathways type work. It looks different in every setting, but there's some really some things I've come to expect in these transitions. The change is hard, and someone is always caught in the transition. And our 7th and 8th grade students are definitely those folks right now. And we've talked about that pretty openly with the parents. We are lifelong educators. We do not want to harm children. We love them, and we understand how high stakes testing can feel to students. And we try to do everything we can to mitigate that. But we just want to keep reminding folks that to us, this assessment was an affirmation of the work that our math teachers have been doing over many years. We taught up to 8th grade standards, and we understand that our students performed at the grade levels that they are expected to be in chronologically. And our teachers told us this. We don't see the same level of super duper advancement that we're hearing about in the community. Now we have some testing data to tell us what the landscape looks like right now. The test was not made overly hard to try to skim people out. It was made by professional testing companies that actually write the curriculum for these types of areas and our professional psychometricians. Our teachers confirmed that they believed in the assessments as testing the courses that students were trying to opt out of. And I just want to remind folks that all of these tests were to skip grades of mathematics, not to be at the accelerated rate of the current mathematics courses, and data that is currently given to our students and families through STAR and grades assesses the year of graded material that they are currently in. So if I'm a 7th grade student and I get a 99th percentile in math on the STAR, that is saying that I am strong in my mastery of 7th grade curriculum, not 8th and not 9th. And grades, if it's going right in the classrooms, which I generally think it is, should mean that students have been given tasks of mastery by their teachers and they meet those expectations, and that's what the grades are in that grade level. I know that there's concern and worry and happiness all around in this very complex time that we're dealing with, but the mission is to get kids what they need when they're ready for it, and that's the system that we're starting to build. It is not perfect. There are mistakes. There always are. And we don't want children unnecessarily caught in the transition, but here we are. There was no community discussion of waiting the 5 to 6 years to stagger in all of these types of experiences for families and kids. So that is where we sit. And I just, in case someone's coming late to the game, there's a report for the school committee that has the number of students that tested into each area, and also tried to answer a question that the community has been asking over and over, which is how many students receive outside assistance in mathematics from places outside of the Newton Public Schools. And so we've asked parents those questions in the past. We asked children those questions here. Those questions have no bearing on anyone's placement. Those were simply demographic questions that allowed us to get at this question that we are continually asked, and we can't answer it unless we ask it. But it has no bearing on whether a student is placed in a particular place. And the results were interesting and not super conclusive on any one side. So some folks who placed into more advanced math took outside mathematics. Some who didn't took outside mathematics. So I think people come to needing outside resources for a lot of different reasons. The survey data confirmed that information. And I'm happy to answer any questions that folks have. I also want to say that the assessment design is also listed in this memo, and the standards that were covered. We have a handful of emails over the weekend just saying that we had made this way harder than 7th and 8th grade mathematics. And I want you to know these are the exact standards that were given to create the test. Thank you.
Victor, then Jason.
And we do have our math staff here in case I'm not the best talker on these questions.
Appreciate it. Thank you for the update, Superintendent.
Mm-hmm.
My one question is if you could speak more to the boost option. So for those who are not in the 36 cohort, 36 students who
Mm-hmm.
qualified at this time for accelerated, what options do we have to continue to challenge those who may feel
Thank
the
you
opportunity?
for asking that.
Mhm.
So we are hopeful that tonight you will give us approval for K-8 mathematics that you heard about last week. And I do have the new proposal before you with a recommendation for high school as well, which we have our departments at an agreement that this is the best path forward. So we ask for your support on all that tonight. In the K-8 new mathematics adoption, one of the bonuses of adopting a curriculum like this is that there are resources in the adopted curriculum. These resources are called stretch resources, which are designed to help students who may be ready for additional challenges. I want to describe to you that the difference between the accelerated 8th grade class and the grade 8 class is about 38 days of instruction. So that's the difference in acceleration pace. So in grade 8 math, there's about 38 days of grade 8 instruction, and then it moves to grade 9 content. As we phase in the more rigorous curriculum over the next few years, the percentage of 9th grade content keeps ramping up so that all students eventually are mastering the grade 9 content by the end of 8th grade. So I just want to put it in perspective right now that that's the sort of timing differential. But we know that in any group, even within the 36 students who are going to accelerate, there's going to be a range of needs and a range of capacity. And all teachers are good at trying to figure out what does this young person need and how can we adapt the curriculum to meet their needs. The curriculum we're about to adopt has some personalized learning aspects already built into it. And with the vote to add math specialists to every school, that is their bread and butter, is to watch those data sets with our teachers and help our teachers have the resources they need to execute additional experiences. In an ideal world, when we're all said and done and our K-8 business is all rolled out, it would be my expectation in the common assessments that are part of our end of the year dashboard that we designed through the strategic plan, that common assessments would regularly show next grade level standards to determine all through the course of a student's trajectory, are they taking those advanced math opportunities? And if they are, we know it. Each year, they're able to access those pieces, and the high stakes testing pieces become less and less important to us. That is the goal overall. We're looking to make sure that students have the right kind of mastery and that they get what they need when they're ready.
Go ahead.
And my understanding is that in the fall, there will be early fall, there will be one more review by the staff just to make sure that strange outliers haven't happened for some reason, or that the process will at that point be essentially all finalists. Is that more or less accurate?
So we will continue to always look at how our students are doing to make sure that we have placed them appropriately.
Jason?
Thanks very much for this update. And I know it's been a constant effort to continually communicate with the community through this change. And I think that's been really valuable. And I know with this memo, you'll answer, in my view, a lot of the questions I've been hearing. And so I know we're going to propagate this in all the ways. I guess I'm wondering, I think I heard in your comments that we didn't really know for this full grade ahead test how many kids would qualify. Were we surprised that it was 36 and mid-20s for rising eighth graders? Or did we think it were more, or we weren't sure?
Well, that's an interesting question. So what I heard made me think it would be more. But what my experience tells me is that, we were teaching a certain trajectory and our students showed us that they are with us at that trajectory. So I don't know how we can expect all this acceleration to be the norm if we're not providing it. And so it's a hard one for me to answer. Was I surprised or not? It's as a teacher, you set out your standards and you teach to them and you want students to demonstrate that level of mastery. And so this is a highly rated success in that situation. And for all the discussions we've had, I expected to see more.
I think that makes sense. I think the other piece of data that's come up, and we've heard that there are signs of even greater than one grade level ahead, were some of the STAR math scores, where I think at least as they measure it, and I know that there are differences and we're looking at different rubrics, but we've heard multiple grade levels ahead. I think I'm hearing that this is a more sort of curricular based line that we'd prefer to be drawing and how we're architecting the curriculum. And as it relates to this line, we don't have many kids who are a full grade level ahead.
At least in this class today.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see that shift over time. And we've discussed, of course, that we've been tracking on our current 5th and 6th graders. They look a little bit different. But I hope what we're all seeing is we're coming into a closer picture to being able to watch our students develop and grow and make responsive instructional decisions to support them. And to me, that's the sign of a healthy system.
I think what I also hear is that there was a very careful process to, define the questions embedded in the test to say, this is what we want to hold as the line for this test for future cohorts. It feels like there may be an operational problem here, especially at the middle school where you've got 36 students that are rising 8th graders next year across 4 middle schools. So on average, 9 students. Do we worry about having too small to matter classes, or is that still a valuable test case for the following year? I'm just wondering how we're thinking about that.
Well, we're always worried about that. I mean, my entire job is to use the resources you give us as maximally as I can. So we're going to have to see how it shakes out in terms of schedule and all of those pieces. There is some flexibility for how we do these types of advances. For some of the schools, it may make sense to have students, adjunct to a section, and they may have to receive intervention or an extension just as a person would receive intervention. So we're going to work with those on a case-by-case basis based on the size of the cohort.
Thanks.
Linda, then Tamika.
Thank you. And I echo Jason's comments. This was fantastic. Really appreciate all the work. And it was really valuable to also see the survey data in terms of outside math. My question builds on Jason's just about the execution, particularly of the 36 students. And I know before your time, before multi-level classrooms, they did bus some middle schoolers to the high schools for math. Are you contemplating that in the mix? No.
They'll lose a whole other period of something.
Yeah.
So I know it sounds like we focus only on math right now, but they have all this other stuff to do.
Yeah. I don't know how they did in the past, but anyways, I know it was one executional.
Yeah. we're going to have to look at what the best options are. You're going to see in the next 2 years, we'll just have more and more students eligible for these experiences because the curriculum has been covered.
Thank you.
Mika?
So Jason touched on a lot of what I wanted to follow up on. And so I guess for me, considering that you also shared an expectation, I think we all shared that expectation that this initial cohort would have been larger than 36. It is fair to expect and to anticipate that there are going to be folks, whether committee members or parents or community members, who question whether this is an appropriate allocation of resources, given that we struggle with our resources. So talk to those people about this particular issue and assuring them about the future vision for the accelerated math program and how it's going to catch up, if you will.
Well, I think I just shared like the 3-year journey really has a curriculum underpinning that we're not yet doing. So, you know, I don't think it's realistic for us to expect young people to be 1 or 2 grade levels above where they are. And it feels like we're rushing them through something that has a developmental aspect to it. That said, we were trying to, as you were, meet the demand that we heard about in the community. And I think all of us are going to have to grapple with that use of resources and how we want to figure that out. I want to say that it's super complicated because decisions were made to create multi-level classes at the middle and the high school level. And there's folks on all sides of it who want, like all the debates we've heard across the community also exist within our teaching and principal ranks. So it is a really complex time. The committee made a programmatic investment and I'm trying to follow through on that. So we will continue to update you on how it shakes out operationally within the year. You know that I always say that we're going to keep a couple teachers in abeyance for these types of scheduling issues. As a longtime middle school principal, when you schedule violin, Chinese, advanced math, and these parts, it sometimes gets wacky. And I have to come back to you and say, we adjusted here, but we couldn't make it work here. So we'll come back to you with any of those issues as we would in any school year to see, can we reduce by 1? Can we move somebody over? So we're having those conversations now. And, you know, the principals, it's new to do. So it's all new.
Ben?
Thank you. I'm going to pick up on Lucy's question.
I don't think your mic is on.
Someone's sending me a message. Picking up on Tamika's question, what we're saying is we have 36 students who passed the test across 4 middle schools. So on average, these students are going to be in 9-person classes. It doesn't feel great to take ostensibly the most talented students who need the least and put them in classes that are going to be meaningfully smaller than anyone else's classes. And of course, that means that the other classes are going to have to grow because that's how averages work. Why is this a better approach? What's the merit of this approach versus having said, we're going to take the top 10% or some number that will lead to a 20-person class, and we're going to understand what that means we have to cover material-wise and draw a line, and we're going to give those people that experience.
So that's a quota. And you asked us to tell you who the children were who could master the content and do the work that is going to be the strike zone of the course. If we say we'll just take the top 10%, I've been down this road before, and just this next 2% and then this group and then this group, and that is, you're right back at a multi-level classroom. That is what I heard from the community. If you want to direct me to do something different, we'll have to go back to the drawing board, but we chose students who mastered the standards for the study that they're supposed to now take on. I would hate to throw students who may be somewhat prepared for that into this coursework. It's not like we taught this all along and then we're saying, oh, with a little bit of a boost here, you could get into it. I mean, the data broke out pretty starkly with the majority of folks, at least I'll speak to 7th grade, being in the 0 to 39% mastery range. Now, you're going to say there's this great middle part, and luckily we have a new curriculum with some resources that can help us adapt to that scenario. And again, we are in a transition period. I can't I couldn't plan this until I knew what the outcomes were. And like I said, I thought it was going to look different. So did you, I think.
One of the things that happened in this process is that we, I think, tested knowledge rather than aptitude, right? We said, have you learned this stuff? Has someone taught this to you? Which maybe we picked up some self-studiers, but we probably picked up a lot of kids who took a lot of private math and got taught something somewhere else. Some of them probably got taught it a year ago and forgot it, right? I certainly did a brain wipe every time I finished a midterm or a final, and then I would forget everything I had learned prior to that. And we got some emails from parents who would say, well, my kid covered this 2 years ago, but they didn't remember how to do it on the moment test. So the question is, do we think that we're providing the experience for kids who have interest and aptitude in math, or for kids who have funded an experience that they then retained after the fact?
Well, the data didn't bear that out. So you saw who got in and who took math and who got in and who didn't take math. And like, I don't know how to account for like you knew it 2 years ago, but now you don't. Like that was still it's still the expectation is, can you do the coursework now? And it wasn't an acceleration scenario. It wasn't, are you good at math and are you capable of learning quickly? It was, can you skip an entire grade level of math content? That is what you asked, what the community asked for. So I think the high schools address this through different types of courses like accelerated versus honors versus a college prep class, right? Because of that gradation. This is our first step to different pathways for students. And the ask was, there are so many people who are ready to skip this grade altogether, and we weren't allowed to take a test to do that. And so now we've done that and we know the landscape.
I think my point would be, I'm going to ask you to remember a slide that we looked at 3 months ago, but it was the slide that had the 6th grade and the 7th grade and the 8th grade and the colored bars going across and showing. I'm getting a few head nods.
Yep.
So we said yes to what was put in front of us, which was this group of people just skips some color and goes to the next color entirely. And the other people do a year of 7th grade that's half one color and half another color.
That's right.
What I'm left
That
wondering,
starts next year.
I understand.
Mhm.
What I'm wondering is if we should have said, instead of a skip the whole grade, we should have had a bar that drawn a different line somewhere, but we still had 2 colors in there, so that would have been more accessible to some more kids than 9 per building. That's what I'm wondering. I'm going to support this. I'm going to vote to approve it. But this part of this cohort doesn't feel good. And I think we also recognize this is like one grade. This is 1/13 of our population. But if you have a kid in that grade, and I do not, then you care a lot about that 1/13 of our population. And it feels like this is a difficult situation, a difficult answer to wind up at, given where we are.
If I may, I just want to say that next year they're getting a half more rigorous experience than anyone ever has to date. So previously they weren't getting any of those things. So if the only success metric we're saying here is everybody wants to skip a grade, I don't think that's a realistic expectation. I think some kids can, and they've demonstrated that they can't. But what we were charged with was it strengthened the rigor of the mathematics program, and we are taking that step. So 6th and 7th grade students will have that more rigorous experience and have access moving forward. We've got this like tough transition moment, but does not co-opt their end experience or their capacity to get into honors courses at the high school or any of the courses that are currently available or available next year or the year after. The end game is the same.
I understand and agree with all of that.
Okay. I just want to make sure no one is thinking that their child has missed out on this opportunity in 7th grade and therefore will never be whole.
Right. And my point is there may have been a somewhat less advanced opportunity that somewhat more children could have accessed. Okay, good.
Jason, then Linda, then Tamika.
I think where you all landed was half of my comment, which just maybe to say it slightly differently is, I would not want your reasonable concerns in my view about having full classrooms in this transition period to mean anything about how we feel about the overall program. That's my personal view. I don't think we're asking for a different program.
Right.
We are in this growing pain stage, as you articulated. And like you talked about, I call it the candy stripe slide. But yeah, it's like there are 2 years of transition, and it depends on which rising grade level you're in now. You're going to be transitioned to ultimately what will be one full year accelerated. But I do agree with your characterization that at least for this accelerated test, we're not evaluating, maybe we should do it, 30% of this stripe and 70% of that stripe. We're only saying who are it turned out, 36 kids who are ready for the full next stripe. And so I just think I would weigh that, because just along the lines of what you said already, Anna, is like, is this a helpful learning for that teacher to try this new course that's now hopefully going to be more full with more sections the next year, versus, just like the rising seventh grade and eighth grade teachers are going to have a little bit of a candy stripe that's going to move each year. Would it be a huge move based on where the test scores were, where there's some cuspy kids that could have a 30% and a 70%, and not to bend the model too much, but to have 4 full classrooms, that would seem to bear some merit, and it would still move the ball towards where we were going. I think this is around the edges personally, and I look forward to however you all decide to implement it, like you said. But that, along with the other permutations of how do you operationalize it, would make sense to consider for me. Thanks.
I was really going to say the exact same thing. We are in this transition period, and does it make sense because of that to perhaps bend the edges a little bit for this year, maybe even for next year? I don't know. Something to consider. The other thing I just wanted to ask, I asked this before, but partly for our community members who are here this evening, as well as online, to reassure people, like remind me, Anna, my 2 kids took 8th grade math in 8th grade and were able to take AP statistics senior year. They're fine. They're fine. And so
Telling me.
yes, that it feels crushing when you're in the middle of it as a parent. Your kid is smart and you're like, there should be one of these 36. They're going to be okay. They are going to be okay. And actually, I forgot this. Those 36 kids, what do they take senior year for math?
Yeah. Statistics,
Wait.
electives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's the same. This is what I mean. It's the same end
Yeah.
game. Yeah. And I met a kindergarten dad recently who told me you got to start offering college in high school. And I just have to say again that we provide K to 12 education. And of course we want kids challenged and get what they need, but that is what we do. We are not a college.
that's all I had.
Ben and Jason pretty much put a very exclamation point pin on the sum of my concerns around this. But I think the other half of the picture, not even half, the majority of the picture is almost, we have 900 students in middle school overall, or I'm sorry, seventh graders. And when you're thinking about the $2 million investment that we're making in the middle school, in the math program, we are looking to, well, I'm capturing the interventionist
gotcha.
cost with the curriculum cost.
So that would be 3 million then.
All right, I'll raise you some money.
Okay.
So the $3 million investment, we need to make sure that it is working for all of those students in middle school. And the 36 who are going to be getting this curated, customized something at the expense of the time that could be utilized and pushed into those other students, there's an imbalance there. And I don't know how you're going to address that. And, I'm willing to wait and see what is the thoughtful, solution that comes out of this. But that is the genesis of the issue as far as I see it, that we know that we have around 230 students from their STAR assessment data who are below benchmark. That's a heck of a lot more than 4% of the kids on top. So for me, it's like push the supports in where they are the most acutely needed. And the ones who are already far accelerated beyond their current grade level that we know, 36 kids, they get something, sure. We address their needs, sure. How we do that in apportion to the rest is the issue for me. That's it. Thank you.
Jonathan?
I guess I've listened to a bunch of this conversation, and I think I understand a lot of the sentiments around it. I think the piece I'm struggling with is, I understand this sort of desire to, and I support the notion that we need to make the most out of the resources associated with the cohort support, with the cohort going through this transition. The thing that I worry about is it feels like this conversation is going in a place where it's like, hey, we don't really like the way that this panned out. And so, can't we create a custom incremental set of curriculums for curricula?
Yep.
Can't we create a custom set of incremental curricula for the next, I don't even know what it is. It's like 2 to 3 years of bridge or 1 year of bridge. I've lost one or 2 years of bridge. We spent hours last week and hours more before that on the operational complexities and resource intensivity of overhauling the curricula for the entire school system. I would hate to, my general reaction here is I'd be very reluctant to see us task the superintendent and the school system with creating yet another collection of programs for a short period of time. The question here was like, look, we're going to make this transition. How do we make sure that the most students get the most out of the transition? The basic hypothesis was that there was a real cohort of kids. Let's not forget, we've got 36 kids who are going to get a really great opportunity. Good, let's keep moving. And I guess that I'd be reluctant to see us go back and try and figure out how we try and make history match up with the way the math, or make the reality match up with or the program match up with this reality. I'd be reluctant to see that happen. That actually feels like yet another not great use of kind of time and resources and how that comes together. And so that's my thought in listening to this discussion. For what it's worth, I looked at the data. I wasn't really entirely sure what to make of it, other than it seems that our kids know the things that we've taught them, which feels like actually a pretty good outcome. That feels like a good place to be. So,
Victor, then Jason.
The way I feel like we don't move the goalposts because just we don't like the way the score of the game is going, right? And this is the metaphor I'm using in my mind right now. Sorry to use a soccer frame in my mind. And I worry a little bit that this is what's happening, that if we set the goalposts at mastery, a grade level above, that, and I think the reasonable arguments that were made about, okay, this is the outcome that we want to know, this is the best use of resources. I think that's, again, a fair point. I tend to lean in similar directions as you, Jonathan. That it feels like we're moving the goalposts a little bit, or we're risking moving the goalposts in order to do this. And you would only do that either because you fundamentally believe the goalposts are wrongly put in the first place, or in other words, that the screener was invalid or not valid for some reasons. I think we have to defer to, in my opinion, we have to defer to the superintendent and her team and the other outside consultants who set it up to, based on that reputation, assume that those results were as valid as can reasonably be, notwithstanding understandable concerns that I've heard and you've all heard probably in your conversations and emails. To me, it just comes back to, okay, so what's the end goal that we're trying to solve for? And the end goal, I think, is for those students who are in that 36, okay, there will be some path we have to figure out logistically to solve for that. As I was saying from the very beginning, for those who are, let's say, partially qualified for Accelerate or didn't quite make it to the full cutoff point, but are showing either aptitude or other promise, how do we make sure that they're not bored in the classroom? And so again, to me, that's, if it's going to be through amplified decimals or something else, if that's the solution that we're saying, that's what we put our I'm killing my metaphors here. If we were putting all the eggs in that sort of basket, then we just need to double down and make sure that those extensions are truly meaning. And that means a lot of effort around the curriculum being properly adopted, the teachers being properly supported in the deployment of that. I mean, I think that's the way that we lean.
May I just for a second?
I think the superintendent has a response, and then Jason. Is that okay?
I'm good.
Good. Okay. You want to cede to Jonathan?
I just want to make sure, though, that Victor, that I understand I want to make sure that I understand the plan, and in response to the way you're describing it, like what you've just described is we're going to go do what we said we were going to do with respect to up-leveling the curriculum in the math classes, right? And so the double down here is like, yeah, we actually got to go do that. We said that we're going to do it. We're going to go do it. And so I think like that, I think the community should take real confidence in. Like nothing about this should undermine that plan or that set of outcomes that we've set out and that the superintendent and schools have been driving towards. And so we should all, like, in some ways it's almost disingenuous, I think, for us to say that we, quote, don't like the data as it came back. Like that's like kind of not the point, right? It's not to like or not to like, it's just the reality of where we're at, and like we keep moving and we accommodate it. So sorry, maybe that wasn't needed, but I just want to make sure that
I was just saying only to the extent that we're saying if we're reconsidering the supports that are required for it. That's what I meant when I was saying like the risk of moving goalposts is.
I am arguing ardently for not moving goalposts.
I know. We're actually aligned. Yeah.
Jason?
Thanks. Just very briefly, I want to agree very much with the sentiment that we're supportive of the program. Everyone's going to get more extension and support regardless of where they've landed. It turns out by the numbers, I would say it's not that we didn't like the data. We were a bit surprised by the data. And so we're talking about the sliver of an edge case now and how do we manage it? And I very much agree. We should defer to the discretion of the superintendent and her team. I do think it's worth considering these cuspy kids not knowing where the data sits. But if the answer is the complexity from that is more than whatever critical mass you gain from getting a full classroom, that may be the case, and that's the price of moving the program, in my view.
Ari?
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Nolan, for this. I know all of our inbox have been flooded with it, with a lot of questions, a lot of concerns around it. But I think I'm just going to reiterate a few things that have been said that, we knew this was going to be a transition period. We have the data now. I think that's been, like, for me, the most clarity of, like, I think we hear a lot out there from parents, from families, but we have the data, and that's something like we can point to and say, okay, but like Jonathan just said, now we know next steps, and like we know we have to elevate this curriculum that we're voting on tonight. Question though, when can I think it's valid what Tamika kind of pointed out of just kind of like, we know their support's needed at the lower level a lot more than necessarily that 36 cohort. When can we kind of expect kind of not necessarily a transition plan for these folks, but just kind of like how the operation is going to shake out, just so we have an understanding?
So those young people have already been identified, and Jen Shore sent them letters to say you are eligible for summer program, free summer program on us in math to get you to right before school starts in August, so that they get that boost right away. So we already have identified who that is right now. Our spring benchmarking is shortly following, so we'll confirm or disconfirm it. I mean, some of us are worried, like, we hope families will take advantage of it, because it's a really important way to combat summer learning loss and to address the achievement needs of the grade they're leaving. And that's really important. And then we can hit the ground running because the math specialists will be on site. Our win cycles and our data cycles will happen just as they have been doing through MTSS at the elementary level for math and literacy. They will now happen at the middle schools for math. So we do have more hands on deck. We have the specialties of these math specialists. It's not going to be perfect, right? We still have to address those needs and the needs of our advanced learners and everybody in between. But at least we'll have more of the resources than we did before, from the curriculum resources, the training, and the math specialists. That's really important. You can't do this work without it. And I also want to say things like many tracks and levels of old come up because there is no agility in the MTSS. And so leveling is just like over-identification of special education, in that we can be more agile than that if we have more math resources and a clearly defined scope and sequence for mathematics. So special educators and EL educators know what those expectations are and can modify those. So we're not lessening the rigor, which is what we heard everywhere, right? When we are at the place where the transition for curriculum is done, we're not pulling the rigor down to meet students who may not be at grade level. We are pushing them up with additional supports. And so that whole transition is different than what we hear people's experiences right now. But I mean, what we're hearing from our own data is that students are grasping the grade level material in large numbers, and we know who those 250 students are who are not. And we want to get that data to look more like our kindergarten intervention data for reading, which is like less than 50 kids needing intervention right now. So we just haven't had the tools at the middle school. So I look forward to it.
All right, we'll close that item and we are going to circle back because I'm new here and do the consent agenda. Is there anything anyone would like to pull from the consent agenda? It consists of minutes from our last meeting on the
Pull the minutes.
I'm gonna pull the minutes. Okay. Is there a motion to approve grants from the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3, Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7 is a yes. Ward 8.
Yes.
Mayor Laredo. Thank you.
Yes.
We're getting a little feedback from you, Mayor Laredo. I don't know if you've got another device on.
Could you hear me? I voted yes.
Yeah, now you sound good. Yeah, I heard you just had some feedback. We're good.
You.
Okay, so consent agenda minutes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just sent in a spelling correction on the name of the pledge reader. I didn't see any note that we're making that adjustment.
But yes, we have multiple typos to correct, a few different typos to correct in the minutes. The reader, the name of the pledge. The
I just
pledger.
want to know what the typos are that you already identified.
Pledge.
The pledge reader, yeah.
Name.
But we had one, so I will remove none. And I spelled David Silver's name wrong, so I will correct that.
And Ben has an additional one for the pledger. The pledger's name was also spelled wrong.
Benji's name. Benji's name.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes with those corrections? Ben,
Second.
Victor, all right. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7 is a yes. Ward 8.
Yes.
Mayor Laredo. Oh, he's gone.
Yes.
Great. Oh, reason for your absence is right there. Oh my gosh, so cute.
Hey, sweetie.
All right. We will move from that adorableness to school choice.
Also adorable.
Also adorable.
I don't think the universe likes me very much. Math placement and school choice in one night. Not good. Hi, Liam.
Hey, everybody, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're quite loud.
I'll try and speak a little quieter. Apologize for not being there. I think you can hear I've got a pretty bad cold right now. So just wanted to present to you folks tonight is actually a school choice vote for you folks. And we put down, and I'll stop talking here, a bunch of kind of answers to some of the questions you had on the number of students with staff, or excuse me, staff they come to NPS and they bring our students. There's 143 of them. We also put some of the students, the number of IEPs that those staff children bring, which is approximately 19%, just a little bit lower than that. And then we did some financial modeling that was asked for as well. And there was a lot of internal discussion about that financial modeling in terms of marginal cost. And we presented one model that there's really a lot you can discuss about marginal cost. We showed some of our methodology. I'm sorry, it's a little bit hard to read it. And but happy to open this up to any questions, and Dr. Nolan, if she's got any further to add on school choice.
We just took all the things you asked for and put them in this memo.
Anyone have questions or comments on school choice? Jason?
Just want to first thank Liam for responding to all the questions and providing the model and being a thought partner. I agree with many of the comments that have been made by my colleagues in past that it's important for us, especially as a new committee, to look at this with fresh eyes and look at the data. You know, I think the model in general as a framework makes sense in terms of how we're structuring it. I think the key gap for me is the marginal costs associated with personnel, and in particular, the personnel at the middle school and high school level. Right now, the current model has, you know, as we've talked about in prior meetings, the marginal revenue that we get is sort of, in our projections, fixed at $5,000 per student per year. There's some nuances to that, but in general, that's fixed. And for any new student coming into our district, the marginal costs right now are only modeled in non-personnel items: supplies, curriculum materials, device software costs, et cetera. And so we've done a lot of work to look at the special ed personnel costs. I think that was an area that is really important for us to assess. And in general, I'm simplifying, of course, but in general, I think we feel that the structure of school choice addresses a lot of those marginal costs. The sending district would bear many of them. But on the gen ed personnel costs at the middle school and high school level, you know, when we think about the concept of marginal cost, it's not just, hey, could this bump us into another classroom teacher? It's also, because we've seen this as enrollment fluctuates up and down, it could mean we're unable to reduce a teacher level that is responsive to our enrollment needs over time. And just, you know, I think I want to be careful about how I'm speaking about that, but I just mean in sort of academic terms, that's marginal cost. And so I really do think that we have to look in the middle school and high school level at what we can predict in cost levels. And so the average costs, if I have it correctly, and please correct me, in middle school and high school for gen ed personnel costs, this is average, not marginal, is around $13,000 or $14,000 per student.
Yes, that's what we came up with. Yes.
So there may be instances where we can plan. I certainly at the elementary school level, I think the superintendent's proposal is to put 80 seats available, and we'd be placing those in places where, in general, our neighborhood elementary school model had relatively small classes. And so there, I think we can get comfortable with the marginal personnel costs being much lower. The middle school and high school level, it's hard for me to understand in the model how it's not approximating average cost per student. Maybe there's a little bit lower level in middle school if we can time it well. By the time you get to high school, and with the way the big high schools are structured, you're probably, in my view, landing in that $14,000 per student per year metric. And so that basically means that in those years, and the student will be with us the whole time, they're adding $5,000 to the district, and on a marginal level, probably in terms of revenue, $14,000 just on non-personnel costs. It's going to be hard to make the model work, in my view.
Ben?
Sharing mics is like one of my nightmares where I'm on the city council. Thank you, Liam, for all the work. I agree with Jason that the marginal cost of $3,000 for high schoolers is probably low. We've discussed this between ourselves and with you. I don't agree that it's probably going to be equal to the average cost. But the way I look at it, to not repeat everything Jason said, we've got years where we've got 48 and 64 high schoolers, and that's, I would think, is going to have some personnel impact, or else it's just going to mean materially more crowded classrooms. And we're already hearing about high schoolers not getting the courses that they want to get into, having overcrowded classes. It feels like there is an impact when you start adding 30 kids per high school. I was looking through all the materials. I thought that Tamika's 2024 memo aged well, and I know that you don't like it anymore, but when I read it, there's a comment about injecting distrust and malcontent. That rang true. I think that my sense is this would not be at all popular in the community. And maybe we don't like every reason that every person would give for not wanting to do it, but I think that it would weaken some trust. And I think that we all know that we're on a trust building mission here, and that we're trying to restore some trust and to build up trust in the school so that people choose us over whatever their other options are. We're going to be faced in these chairs with doing things that are both right and unpopular. And to me, this isn't one of them. I really struggle with another concern that I don't think has been brought up in our conversations yet. I think as I model this out, and with the numbers that are in there now, it works. But if you go with Jason's numbers, then what starts to happen is we benefit now and for the next couple of years while I've got elementary school students, because they're cheaper to educate. But in the out years of this thing, when those kids are all washed through into middle school and high school, and they're more expensive to educate, this could be a money loser, right? If that marginal cost is up $5,000 or over, what we've done is we've treated ourselves to a gift in the next few years at the expense of some school committee down the road. That starts to feel like past administrations kicking their pension obligations down the road and making it our problem. And that makes me really tempted to do it. But I think that we have to resist that. I think we have to say that this isn't our can to kick on this one. It's not obvious what the near-term value is. Longer term, it does get more expensive. One way we know it's going to get more expensive and less beneficial. And so I just haven't been able to get there on this. The version that I would be interested in looking at, I said this last time we discussed it, would be one that goes school by school, grade by grade, targeting specific children, right? There's a bunch of teachers' kids at day in 8th grade, heading into 8th grade, and we don't think a lot of parents are going to be eager to move their kid for 8th grade or something. And we surgically, was the word I used last time, we surgically select seats to open within a hope that we have a certain hit rate on getting the teachers' kids into the program. And we use that as our experiment. I think that a broad brush 80 kids across elementary is too big of a risk for me, and too much potential for long-term cost.
Thank you. We have Victor and then Mayor Laredo.
Liam, thank you as always, and hope you feel better soon. I share many of the same concerns that you were talking about, Ben, that longer term there is uncertainty. And I do lean more towards the average cost rather than the marginal cost. Well, let's not go into technical elements there. The one question I guess I have, and maybe it's I think the availability of the data. Liam, one thing I'm curious about is the 30% of the special education students with IP are non-staff, 18% are the staff, right, on that sort of line. And then for IEP costs, we're using the average IEP cost of staff students. Do we have a rough sense of what that figure, are we able to get that figure for the non-staff students? And the other element I'm also curious about is go ahead.
How would we know students who haven't come to us yet?
Well, I'm talking about historical. So let me frame it differently. If we had a sense of what historical IEP costs were for folks, right? So that's what I'm worried a little bit about is the higher percentage are going to be the non-staff students. And my hypothesis, although it's not factually driven yet, is we'll have a disproportionate number of folks who are coming in who are particularly unhappy with their existing programs. There will be higher cost to serve, et cetera. So like, I'm almost trying to figure out what's a better number to use for the extreme case.
Program scenario tells us that is the case, right?
Yes,
Who can choose us tend to have a higher percentage of special education needs.
So what I'm worried about is that, and I'm not expecting this to have been done. It's almost in a perfect world, we'd have a high, medium, low scenario. I worry a little bit that this could become our medium, low scenario. The high cost scenario could be that if we do get a lot of folks who are ending up needing higher supports, this could be we may wipe out our 3 million in gains. That's my.
I would also
thoughts.
say to you that our staff with students with high needs come here as well. So I do think it's probably a good litmus test.
You think it's representative of it?
I think so.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Laredo?
Thank you. Can you hear me? I'm sorry.
Yep.
I'll try to be brief.
Mayor,
Look,
it sounds like you have two devices on at once or two windows open at the same time that are making an echoey thing happen.
I don't know. Let me try to get rid of something quick.
Another suggestion is you could turn the volume in your room on your computer down if it's feeding back.
That better?
Yes.
So,
Is that better?
Yeah.
yes. Yes.
Let me try this again. Hold on a second. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Look, I'll be brief. School committees for 20 plus years have gone through the same analysis and voted this down repeatedly. And there was a reason for that. The math just doesn't work. It didn't work a long time ago. It actually works less and less as we move forward because that $5,000 number has stayed the same for a long, long time. And every single year our costs go up. So even if, and I don't think this is the case, even if we might have a small marginal gain for that student in elementary school, it's just not going to work as we move down with that same student in middle and high school, plus all the other costs, whether it's what Jason said or Ben said. I don't think it really matters. So I'm just going to urge us to vote no and move on from this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you. I wanted to agree with Ben on a few fronts and then suggest a minor modification. So I very much agree that we should not be kicking the can down the road, and I do think that's a risk with the structure that we're putting in place. I also agree that a surgical plan that's different than 80 seats, but instead had a different target in mind, like what you talked about, would be interesting for a future scenario. I think the modeling really matters here, but we'd really want to be assured that for one reason or another, that these marginal costs are not approaching average costs. And you've heard my argument. The thing that I would just be careful about is I think from my perspective, there's a significant difference in how I'm appraising marginal costs between elementary, middle school, and high school because we know where to put them now. It's a little more predictable. I'm not sure they're meaningfully cheaper to educate is all I just wanted to clarify. Thanks.
Thanks, Alicia. So, I think you guys have always understood and appreciated that I'm in a bit of a weird kind of predicament, that I don't endorse or support school choice as a practical matter. However, in this matter, and at this time, on the back end of 7 years of making cuts every single year, I am now in a position where the knee-jerk impulse to say, we don't do school choice and we should just vote no is no longer the viable option, nor is it the responsible one. That doesn't necessarily mean we fling open our doors and we welcome one and all. I think, Ben, your strategic kind of surgical approach, if that is something that folks are willing to consider, we should consider. And the reasons that we consider doing something vis-a-vis school choice, vis-a-vis availing ourselves of funds that our state legislators have said, districts, you may not like it, but we're going to put this out there for you to access it should you choose. So the reason that we should maybe choose some form of something along the lines, whether now or in a close year, next year, whenever, is because, and I've said this before, but I'm going to say it again, we cannot self-determine when it is we go out to our residents and say, hey, we need funds to do all these amazing things or to keep all these amazing people, and we need your help. We can't say, we're going to just, this is the year, we're going to put it on the ballot and we're going to run that vote across Newton. We don't do that. We can't do that unilaterally. We also cannot just write ourselves a blank check, something the school committee that I was a member of a couple of years ago, we found out very well. We cannot just say, we want X amount of dollars to run our system and do all of our things and get that money. So we can't do that. We can't do that. We also have demonstrated a lack of a willingness to close a school or two schools that are very small and tiny and could certainly benefit from consolidating. Our district and our community doesn't want us to consider that. We as a committee aren't really in favor of that. We are not looking to make student-facing cuts. I'll tell you right now, over my 7 years on this school committee, we've made some student-facing cuts. It comes up. And so once you do your surgical slices of the administrator, you're going to have no more bone to slice into, and you're going to have to look at the student-facing cuts. You're going to be maybe considering, are we getting rid of elementary music again? Oh, gee, that one hurt. Are we maybe going to be cutting secondary transportation? $2 million savings. You're going to be looking at these things if these issues persist. And so my point is, you consider something that you can control to bring in additional dollars that you know you need to do and keep the things that you know you want to do and keep. And you do that at a time when maybe you, yes, Ben, I agree with you. There is this trust building thing that's happening in our community. But if we are consistent and consistently making the case that we need these funds, that the generous allocation that we get, the increase from our previous allocation, even 4% increase or 7% overall is still not enough to keep us from making cuts. I think that's one where voters are going to say, all right, I see there's very little wiggle room here. And I think it's rational for the school committee to make some hard choices. We've had to make hard choices in the past. Those are cuts. So this one, I think it's reasonable to consider. And I stand by the memo that I wrote, as I said. It was a very good memo, if I do say so myself. But the times, I think that even the last sentence I wrote was, at this time, I cannot consider. That was 2 years ago. And at this time, I'm considering.
Linda?
I think, first of all, I do think this is a really good exercise. We have to, right? And I might be willing to consider the very surgical approach that Ben described. I do feel we need to dig further into our model. We assumed in the model that 30% of the non-staff students were likely to require special education services. And because that is similar to what we see in our METCO program. But I see this very different from the METCO program. And one of the key differences is for a general education student, that family needs to supply their own transportation. I think we have a very, very small window or group of individuals that would be willing and able to drive their kids to school from Waltham, Brighton, maybe Watertown for 12 years. And then you get after school activities, etc. Most families cannot manage that sort of coordination. I know I certainly can't. So I think what that means is the type of family that this is best suited for is a family that would have transportation as part of the model due to special education services. So I know it sounds outrageous, but I think a percentage along the lines of 80% requiring special education is more realistic in this sentiment. And I also recall earlier this year, we heard about the overtaxing on the assessments that are required for every special education or potential special education student. And I think that would require additional resources. So at the end of the day, if you're using a percentage like 80% requiring special education, the additional incremental revenue doesn't make sense in terms of the risk involved. I know that sounds crazy, that 80%, but it's truly, to me, intuitively where we would land.
Thank you. Ben?
Yeah, I think I don't know if it's going to be 80%, but I think that there's a juice being worth the squeeze issue here. And I agree with actually a lot of what Tamika said about all of it, constrained revenue opportunities, constrained cost cutting opportunities. You know, and look, I think we all have a lot of respect for Dr. Nolan. And when she brings us something and says, let's think about doing this, we think about it very seriously. And it's not just being tossed out there for us to kick around for fun. Master Bresky was on side with this one before as he taught us the ways of the force. I look at the number, like the upside, and I do think this is probably an optimistic case, is $350,000. I don't know if all of our viewers are watching and opened up the model. That's what we're talking about, is $350,000 next year. This is $3.5 million, you know, then I think we're having a different kind of conversation because of the upside. But it starts at 350 and then declines every year down to 46,000 in the final year. And that's if all of these assumptions that were pulled out of thin air. No offense, because that's the best we can do, right? That's what we've got to work with, is guessing. So I would need to see a much bigger upside or a much smaller downside. But here the risk and the downside to me doesn't offset the upside. And I do think we should take a look at a narrower approach that would have the benefit of gathering some data for us next year. And I'll be happy to take that one on.
I agree that the surgical approach is sort of the only way that we can figure this out, because the financials truly rely on the capture rate of staff kids. They just do. And it's really hard to model that. It's also very hard for us to model it in a way that would give us high confidence, because we just don't have a way to experiment with it. And once we've got the kids, we've got the kids. So for me, it's hard to go yes on this for this year, but I do think that just because we have not done this before in Newton is not a reason to not be considering it. And B, we should dig into this surgical model. I think we have work to do there. We've talked a little bit about what we might try. I think we need to try that. I don't see that being something that comes to fruition in time to make a decision this year. It's just too complicated. That's my point of view. If there's not more discussion, we could entertain a motion to opt out of school choice, because we are in unless we opt out. Does anyone have such a motion?
I make that motion.
Oh, sorry. Let's pause on that because Mayor Laredo has his hand up. Go ahead, Mayor.
I was going to make the motion opt out, but if it's been made, that's fine. I'll let someone else go ahead.
Okay, Mayor Laredo makes the motion. Is there a second?
Sure.
Mr. Seconds. Okay, so the motion is to opt out of school choice for the next incoming school year, 26-27. We will go ward by ward. Ward 1.
Yes, to opt out.
Yes, we're opting out. Okay. Ward 2.
Yes.
Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Having done my due diligence to have us consider it and have a robust conversation, I'll opt out as well.
Okay. Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7 is a yes. Ward 8.
Yes.
Mayor Laredo.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes 9-0. Right. Can't wait to do it all again next year. All right, so we will move on to the wellness policy, first read.
This is Amy Mistro, Director of Business Operations, who oversees our food service program, and Tracy Sokolowski, Director of Humanities, which includes Phys Ed, Health, and Wellness. Welcome. Aren't you invigorated by the school choice discussion?
Yeah. Way easier when we did it.
I know.
For those of you who are watching from home, I'll go into a little bit of an overview of the materials that we submitted in the packet for school committee review. We are here presenting proposed changes to 2 policies and to the wellness guidelines, which is part of the triennial assessment, which we are required to do every 3 years. We did it last in 2023, so we have to go through the process and show our due diligence by June of 2026 this year. Included in your packet is a memo explaining the entire process, a red line copy of policy EFC, free and reduced price food status, ADF, the wellness policy, and then there are the 2 tools that we used as part of the assessment. Massachusetts does their own assessment. The rest of the nation uses the WellSat 3.0, but the, let's see, which are the groups? The DESI Food Service, the School Wellness Initiative for Thriving Community Health, the John C. Stalker Institute for School and Nutrition, and the Alliance for a Healthier Generation have created the Massachusetts Local Wellness Policy Strength Checklist and the Massachusetts Local Wellness Policy Implementation Assessment. And that's what derived, in part, the recommended changes that we have presented to you tonight. We also went through a DESI Food Service Administrative Review this year. It was a lot of fun. Super excited to do that again soon. It went actually pretty well. They shocked us and they said, this went well. We said, really? Because it doesn't feel like it. In that, they gave us several critical action items that we needed to address, 4 of which were for the wellness policy, which said the same thing over and over again. You're missing this, you're missing this, you're missing this, you're missing this. So those have also been introduced into the recommendations that we've provided to you tonight. With that, Tracy, anything you want to add?
You did lovely.
Thank you. We also enjoyed being co-chairs of the Wellness Committee together. So we entertain questions through you, Madam Chair. Right?
You have something?
So I have some aggregated questions that came from the group. There's no written responses to these this week because they came in fairly late. So you're getting them live. Our special guests have seen them. So there was a lot of discussion of all the check boxes, like some that were partially met, some that weren't. Is it realistic that we should be meeting them all? You know, I think people were trying to say, like, are we in the toilet on this? Like, doing a terrible job? Are we doing a great job? Like, benchmark it for us. Some of the stuff that's in there is not required. You hand wrote about that, but can you give us just a sense of, you know, where are we in the world? And do we aspire to being like well played and at the tippity top on all the things?
I can share this with you. I did a grid of all of the metrics for both of the assessment tools to say what was required, are we, you got a green line if we're meeting it, you got a yellow line if we're not, and then there's an action on the side to explain what we're doing to meet the required action. We will be covered on all the required actions should you choose to meet the recommendations that we have proposed for you. There are a multitude of metrics that they asked us to look through given the groups that I described. I would describe them as aspirational. I don't know that there's a requirement for us to meet all of them. Some of them would be problematic for us to do. One question that came through is where we're not meeting those are a resources problem. Yes, that would be accurate. They're for very health conscious organizations. Were we to meet all of our required expectations, I think that we would be in good stead.
There was a question about removing the safe routes to school section of that, and just what what we're talking about when we're talking about that?
So that actually predates my arrival here. My understanding is that when we shifted to block scheduling at the elementary level, it did create time constraints within the PE program to be able to uniformly provide that time across the district. And that is only becoming increasingly so with the time changes to the schedule. It also, stands to reason that we should be basing our guidelines on state standards, and that is not part of the state standards. So, it's nice have, but it's not a required.
Thank you. I think those were the major ones that came out over and over for wellness.
There was one minor language edit, which we're happy to make when we make the final, when whatever's finally approved, we can make it at that time.
And then there was a question about the feedback on limited access to potable water near a cafeteria. Is that a school maintenance issue? Is it a broken water fountain? Like, what is that?
It's really not its proximity to the cafeteria. They want it in or immediately adjacent. That's not always the case. So we reflected that we're mostly in line.
Okay. There was a request from the committee, which I shared with you all about the time spent in PE in like districts. So you have that in your inbox if you haven't been able to read it. And that's everything. Wellness.
Other questions? What, Ben?
So I am concerned about the reduction in PE time, and I understand that there's an attached increase in recess time, but they're different, right? And it was my question about, do we have benchmarking of peer districts? And I have not yet excavated that email that you sent this afternoon, I guess. Can you help us feel better about making that decision at all?
So you're not going to get an argument from me that says that more time on wellness and the physical wellness and emotional wellness and of students shouldn't be our primary concern. So I think that would be a hard thing for me to argue. That said, with any constraint of a school schedule, there's only so much time that's allotted. I do think there's some gains with the new schedule. Of course, it's going to be a lot of work for our elementary teachers and for our PE health and wellness teachers, and that is something we need to support. But I think the shift to a 45-minute block allows for a much better structured lesson where you can have a holistic, introduction of a lesson, actual assessment, time to mediate, and actually meet the needs of learners within that time frame. There also is some opportunity with the new schedule, which is going to allow us to hopefully creatively introduce some wellness standards that have not been able to be met in the previous schedule. Our teachers are remarkable and have found creative ways to introduce some of the standards that are health and wellness, but not to the level that I think we'd all want our young people to be achieving, and certainly not what the state standards set out. So I do think there's some possibilities and opportunities with the new schedule that weren't there before. I still think there's work to do. And, that is what has been named by everyone involved on the Joint Labor Committee. I wasn't on that committee, but I understand that this is just the first iteration of a schedule, and it's something to continue to look at as we look at time and the needs that need to be met.
Okay.
I just wanted to, for the public at home, who may not be following this as closely as we have been having a 2-year committee to look at the elementary school day and to try to provide all types of improvements for our elementary students, and a bridge transitional schedule on the way to a much more beautiful schedule of the future that we hope to have is occurring, that is making this reduction of some time in some special area classes. So I'm going to come out and say, I want more PE in our schedule, but I'm also going to say tonight, I want more health standards in the elementary schedule. I want more engineering time, you're going to hear me say, see my director of engineering back there. I want more digital literacy and social media learning, and all of those things don't fit anywhere in our schedule right now. So we're in a tough spot. I'll leave it at that, but please know, community members, that we aspire to a stronger overall program, and we would hope that that would include more physical education time.
Well, since you're there, why can't we fit everything into our schedule?
Because our current school day is not sufficient enough throughout the year to meet the Department of Education's 900 hours of instruction for elementary and do all the things that we want to do into the current schedule. We just make it right now. So we're doing the bare minimum that DESE expects us to do. If we want to expand programming, we're going to have to expand our day.
More time in school.
More time in school.
And if we're just, I think we heard.
Well,
I think
or
900
reduce all the other things even more, right? So, and fit in more things into the same schedule.
Nobody ever comes in here and tells us we're doing too much of anything, really. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Okay. Thank you, Tracy. You gave me something to cling to, at least the idea that the 45-minute block might be more productive than a 30-minute block.
All kinds of things.
All right, I'll cling to that. Thank you.
All right. I was going to ask how we fit in these health standards that we're not meeting and all those check marks that were not in the box on those, but I think I have my answer. So thank you. Sorry, Victor, go ahead.
I was just going to say thank you to both of these wonderful ladies for leading this charge. And I think there's also a couple of, well, I won't name them, but a couple of new North and maybe even South students who have also been involved in it that at appropriate time we'll give the recognition as well too. But I think it's wonderful you're engaging student voice in this process. So thank you.
Thank you. This is a first read, so we'll see you back next time for vote.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up is the SEPAC update. I think I have Sarah. Welcome, Sarah. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Dr. Sarah Riccardi-Swartz. I'm the chair of SEPAC this year.
Thank you
for
coming.
having me. Okay, so I'm going to go over our end of year presentation. You should have received it already, so I'll go fairly briefly through the beginning points. First, just an outline. I'm going to go over our role and responsibility. I'm going to acknowledge those that we've worked with this year, talk about our advisory efforts, our community engagement, and then look ahead at what we'd like to do in terms of our collaboration with Newton Public Schools. As most of you probably know, per the Massachusetts general laws, every school committee is required to establish a special education parent advisory council, and we advise the school committee, and we have been partnering with the Office of Student Services on matters pertaining to education, safety of students with disabilities, and we meet regularly with school officials to participate in the planning and development and evaluation of our district's special education programs. And our goal is to cooperate with the district on an annual workshop on the rights of students, parents, and guardians under state and federal law. I just want to acknowledge our board this year. As I said, I'm the chair, and you'll see the names listed out of the rest of our SEPAC board. We have elections coming up soon, and there will be an open chair for communications. We had to have someone cycle off this year. So what did we do in terms of advisory efforts this year? We focused our advocacy on ensuring that there was a thorough guide to the special education programs. Some of you on school committee may have heard that we had been lacking a very thorough and robust guide to our special education services. And so we advised and happily and graciously shared feedback with the Office of Student Services. We are so pleased with the new guide. It's beautiful. It feels very comprehensive, and it's very accessible to the community. And we just ask that it be maintained as a living document and updated regularly on an annual basis. We as a SEPAC board also engaged in efforts of advocacy around the budget. As some of you know, Shri Sadhar spoke, as well as Sahar Sahir spoke at school committee meetings, advocating for sufficient funding for not only all students, but particularly our special education students. In terms of our community engagement this year, we hosted our annual Basics Rights seminar in January 2026. And during the school year, we offered a wide variety of speaker series, including topics on autism research, on school transitions, the big T, what happens when your student is leaving high school and going off into the world, as well as adaptive sports and things like dyslexia education. We also hosted events with local politicians. Some of you on the school committee may have been at our event where we got to know those running for school committee. And we also hosted a webinar with a local politician about the sort of state of funding education at the federal level and working our way down to the local level. We also hosted numerous community-focused events in order to sort of gain a sense of camaraderie among the families that we serve. Okay, so what do we want to do looking ahead? We hope to continue our collaborative partnership with NPS. We want to support the parent community in understanding things like how the reduction in a key ABA role in the district might impact the experiences of their students next year, and particularly in the citywide special education programs. We want to provide family feedback to NPS as they sort of engage with the internal evaluation of the special education program and workloads, which is set to begin in the fall. We're hoping to encourage transparency, consistency, and safety monitoring in the special education van transportation, including timely communications with parents when challenges arise. And I want to say that we were so grateful that Regina Moody, Casey Miller, and Melissa Gamble were at our last open board SEPAC meeting to talk about transportation issues and really reflect on what we can do and what avenues parents have. And it was a really fantastic and collaborative time. We also want to support parents' understanding of NPS's implementation of changes around the regulations regarding timeout, restraint, and seclusion, as we know that DESE has changed their guidelines on that. And we want to continue conversations around competency determination, since we know it's no longer the MCAS that is a requirement for graduation. And we want to think about how that intersects with not only that big T transition, but also planning in the IEP process. We hope to encourage NPS to focus on recruitment, training, and retention of strong special education leaders, including teachers with expertise in a wide range of disabilities and lived experiences as disabled teachers. We hope to help parents and families interpret the common assessment data about their students. And we hope that this will help in sharing progress and understandings about how that data intersects with their own IEP goals for their student and how that's monitored. And finally, we hope for new ways for families with students with disabilities to connect and increase their viability and visibility of SEPAC with their collaboration with NPS. And I just want to take a moment to share our gratitude, not only for Casey Miller, but for Dr. Anna Nolan and everyone on the school committee, and of course our wonderful teachers. Newton SEPAC would not be as successful as it is without the dedication of all of the staff of NPS, and we are very grateful for our tireless educators and the system as a whole. And I'm open to questions.
Thank you. Questions? I guess you just hit it out of the park. No. All right, Jason.
This isn't a question. I just want to say that thank you to you all for all the advocacy that you do. And not only in this very succinct presentation, but all the rich color that's in the full report that you provided. It's a lot that you do to kind of keep everyone moving and active. And the 7 or 8 recommendations were really tangible too, and for us to keep in mind. So thank you for all of it.
Thank you.
Victor?
Yeah, just echoing Jason as well. Thank you. It's a broad and varied community for sure. So being able to consolidate the various viewpoints into a clear set of recommendations is greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much.
There was one question that came through the mail, which was just about the data sets that you asked for from us. And, are we able to? How does that work? What's the information sharing like? So we have lots of regular meetings. So if there's a question, we try to organically just do what we do with all of you, which is get you what you need when they ask for it. So just a couple things. It's hard for us to do estimated future enrollments in special education, but we are tracking, as you know, parent-driven evaluations, those who are on our watch list for various programs. So we do have information. It's not exactly constructed like this, but so estimated future enrollments is a complex scenario. I'll give you just a couple examples. When a clinical trial opens up at Mass General Hospital, we suddenly have a blurb of students that come, and the hospital will say, you should go to Newton Public Schools because they really can support you there. They have strong programs. And so those types of things are really hard to predict. And I'm going to be coming to you shortly with some stories about that, what's happening right now with that for the fall. Percent proficiency in core academics. The way we talk about that is the common assessments that we're building for all the courses. That's part of our evidence dashboard. That will happen as a matter of course. They're just being built in a staggered fashion. And then finally, mass core completion. This one's a little more complicated. We just got an analysis of the district around our mass core completion rates, and we have some work to do there. So it's not just a special education specific issue, but a district issue. And we're not alone in this, in that districts like Newton didn't pay a lot of attention to those types of requirements, which were seen as maybe not the ones that we wanted to deploy. So the committee's going to hear from us on this. We just received DESE's take on our mass core completion rates. So we'll bring that to you as soon as we've digested it. Literally got it last week. That was it. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. All right. I feel like maybe we should stretch next. It's the athletic review. We have our directors here. Could they lead a stretch? What do you think?
I don't know. School committee would like you to lead them in some calisthenics right now. Some warm up. It's my pleasure to introduce to you, well, you know, Dr. Roundtree, our secondary education superintendent, Mike Jackson, athletic director at Newton North, and Keith Davey, athletic director at Newton South. I don't know who's kicking it off, but welcome and thank you.
Yep. I'll kick off and use a sports metaphor. I guess I'll be the leadoff leg here. Former track athlete.
I can see this is going to go all night long.
You got to change the tenor of this.
Let's go.
So we're here. We're a very strong team. We're very happy to talk about our favorite subject, which is athletics in the city of Newton. The format for our presentation, or the agenda, we're going to start off just by giving a scope of the programs and talking about some of the recent success we've had over the last 3 years. Then we're going to talk about student participation and engagement, and give you some of the context for our sports teams, who's on them, what teams we have. Then we're going to talk about the way our programs are organized, and our approach to hiring and supporting coaches. We'll then talk a little about the budgeting structure, and then we had an opportunity recently to go through the NEASC athletic review process at both high schools during the month of April. And we will share some highlights for the process they went through to create the standards reports, and then the feedback that we got from the NEASC review committee.
Jean, can you just tell people what NEASC is and means, since the community is not familiar with it?
So NEASC stands for the New England Association of Schools and Colleges, and they're an organization that does accrediting for high schools, colleges in the United States and also abroad. And so essentially, if you're participating in one of the NEASC accreditations for your entire school, your school community would have a certain amount of time, about a year, to review. I think for a whole school review, I think there are 10 standards, and you'd write like a self-study report. Then there would be a visiting team that will come review the self-study report, visit classrooms, and then give commendations and recommendations. This year, they've been piloting a new program just focused on athletic programs, and so we are among the first in the country to do it. But they're also doing this internationally. So they were in Frankfurt reviewing a school. I think they were in Abu Dhabi recently reviewing an athletic program. So this is also, it's not just a national initiative; it's also an international initiative.
Awesome, thank you.
So we'll kick this off just talking about the opportunities that we offer across the board at Newton North and Newton South. We at Newton North have 36 sports, and Keith can discuss what he has at Newton South. But if you look at this first slide, these are the offerings that both schools share. And then we will go to another slide here shortly that will show you the subtle differences in the two schools.
Yeah, Newton South has 34 varsity sports compared to 36 at North. They have a little bit larger population. We have 3 levels at many of the different sports, and that's very similar to what happens at North as well.
So this slide here shows the differences in the sports that we offer at North as opposed to South. The black check mark is Newton North. And to just cut off a couple of questions that you may have, a sport like dance or cheer are not governed by the MIAA. So you have some flexibility on when you actually run those sports. So for instance, Keith has at Newton South dance in the fall where we have dance in the winter. And we do cheer in the fall and Keith does cheer in the winter. So those are subtle differences that we have that in the Bay State Conference, the conference that we compete in, we decided that for our league to function correctly, we feel like those are the seasons that operate best.
And we've seen the same thing that there's been opportunities that have come up where North has something that's going well, and our community has been very excited about that, such as the Ultimate Frisbee that we started in 24-25, which had already been going on at North. And we've had great success in that. And then this year, North has also piloted girls golf, which is something that we haven't engaged yet. And there's a process that we'll talk about in a few slides about how that kind of comes to fruition.
One quick plug on girls golf. Just since I've been here, we just won the Bay State Conference Championship in a pilot year.
Today.
Which was amazing. So I got the call in Gene's office and the kids were in the background just cheering it on the bus. So for us to be at a pilot program and win the league championship is pretty cool.
Awesome. Golf clap, everyone.
As we look at the last basically 5-year snapshot, I'll look at Newton South first. We've had a growing athletic department in the last couple of years. With 1 state championship in Nordic skiing, 10 Final Four appearances in the MIA tournament, and some of them are a little bit difficult to categorize because they don't necessarily do top 4. 9 DCL titles, which is the dual county league, which we're in. They're in a different league. 4 times MIA Sportsmanship Award recipients, and then the honor roll, which means no ejections from any sport team from 2020 through 2025. And as of right now, we'll head it for this year as well.
For Newton North, I would be lying to say I'm sitting here taking over a program that wasn't successful before I got here. And also I'm in year 5 at Newton North, and we've had a ton of success where we've won 13 state championships across a multitude of sports. You would think the 13 Final Fours kind of go with the 13 state championships, but they actually don't, because track, gymnastics, dance don't have Final Fours. So we have advanced to several Final Fours where we unfortunately didn't complete it and win the state championship. We've had 2-time Gatorade Player of the Year, young lady playing girls volleyball. We've won a couple of New England New England championships in wrestling and gymnastics. The Damco Award is something that a under 5-year athletic director is nominated by a district and then the state. I've been fortunate enough to be nominated and then win the state award this year. And then the coolest one, when I got the job, Dr. Turner challenged me with making sure we win a sportsmanship award. And 2 years ago, we won the state MIA sportsmanship award. So I'm really proud of that we are not only winning, but we are doing it the right way.
Yeah, one thing I would just like to add, although that both schools are in different leagues, over the last 2 years, we have reestablished the spirit of friendly competition between the 2 schools in a lot of different ways. We have the Garden City Classic in basketball. We have an event in the fall where we have multiple fall sports that we'll play against each other, and we feel like that really also kind of adds to the spirit of friendly competition and camaraderie in the city.
I definitely have to say thank you to Dr. Nolan for starting the football game, because it's something that I've wanted to do. And we made that happen this year. First game was at Newton South. We hosted Newton North this year, and I'm really excited about what that's going to look like this fall.
Thanks for being game.
I'm definitely game for that.
The different result this year. When we look at high school participation scale, this is basically the numbers for each of the seasons, the fall, winter, and spring. There are multiple multi-sport athletes. So it's kind of hard to quantify. So in particular, a year ago, 2024-25, there was 1,000 particular student athletes out of the 1986 that participated. So it's a very large percentage of actual students who are participating in our athletic programs.
Yeah, Newton North, we have averaged somewhere between 590 and 620, depending on a particular year. So we've had really healthy attendance and participation in athletics, around 1,800 total. So I feel like we've had a really strong support around our school in terms of the student athletes that come out. I think we're around 590 average this year, 2025-26. This just goes over participation by gender. And we have been more male than female, except one particular year where I think fall of 25, our girls' participation went up pretty significantly. I can't point to why that necessarily was the case. I would love to see more of our young ladies participating in sports, and we're constantly trying to encourage our young ladies to come out. And so we'll continue to try to do that as we move forward to try to even that out even more.
And there are some sports that are more challenging for female participation. We've had great success in the cross countries and track, the swim team, gymnastics, obviously. But for South, teams like basketball, where North has had 3 levels, we've had 2 and not had and been worried about our rosters. So I'm trying to look systemically to find out why there's not more happening from the middle schools up to fill those rosters.
You start with this one first. You want to?
Sure. So clubs and intramurals, we both of us have many different clubs, and part of the intramural challenge is we've tried to be very inclusive in having as many students in our building be part of an athletic program. With the cut back a few years ago of intramurals, the kids who didn't want to get fully involved in a full-on sport now lost that opportunity to be involved in even intramurals, something that I think I would love to see get put back in. We start with a club, and if there's many things that are check marks that are done, and we'll get to that in a minute, it can move into a varsity sport based on a lot of different factors.
Yeah, at Newton North, we have not had intramurals in a while, but we do have a pretty strong club program. It is run through the school where they have club advisors, and we'll again get into how that club can transition into a sport. But we do not have intramurals right now, and I don't know from a spacing standpoint. I'd be concerned about how we would incorporate intramurals, just because of, we'll get to the school dismissal and some other things, but it would just be interesting to how we would navigate that if we ever wanted to do intramurals.
So guys, there was a question about, the club program versus the intramural program, and why can't the other school do what the other school does? Why are they different? So for instance, your intramural budget was cut, your intramural budget was cut. The clubs are funded by contractual stipends that the principal owns, correct?
Mm.
And those stipends are used in a different way at South, not for athletics. Correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I captured how it rolls.
Yep.
So as we look at some of the criteria for whether we would add a sport, right now there's 2 different systems that are in place, one with Newton North, one with Newton South. That's something that Mike and I are trying to do, is get a lot more things that are lined up to be very similar, to make sure that decisions are made the same way. But we have to look at some mandates, Title IX compliance, making sure there's equal opportunities for both genders to be able to have the sports they need to. Facilities, Mike just touched on, game space availability. We're packed, but there are opportunities to still expand in some ways. Financial sustainability, budget impact, the student interest has to be the thing. We've both witnessed a small group of people that have an interest in a sport, but they're just a blip on the radar screen, and there's nobody behind them that want to actually carry that sport on. So we have to take a look to make sure that it's a sustainable sport. And then having competition. If you have a team, you better have somebody to play that's local.
Yeah, and I think that goes to is there a league that they can play in? Does it fit into the Bay State Conference, the league that we play in? So there definitely we share these, the top mandates. We both share those when we decide on a sport. At Newton North, we have adopted a 3 to 5 year process. So ultimate Frisbee, for instance, that is a sport that has consistently over years had great numbers. They had a place to play. They have a group of teams to play around the state. They have a state tournament. They have a national tournament. That is a very robust sport. So after I looked at it, since I got a New North, we decided that this warranted varsity consideration, and then we tried to move forward to make sure we could do the funding, and that we could do everything to make sure they got the same treatment as every other sport at Newton North. So the 3 to 5 year window is about sustained participation, and then all the other mandates that Keith touched upon.
And just for an example of some of the sports, since we were talking in my office before coming to present, flag football and fencing, these are all sports where we know that there's some interest, and also nationally. Like flag football is a really good example of a sport that's gaining traction both for male and female athletes. But in order to do that, we would need to make sure that we had sustained interest in using the consistent process to bring that sport online if we had the right amount of interest.
One of the things too, really quick on that, is you also have to look at what sport is going to take away from, because then you can have participation in a sport and then you bring another sport on, and then all of a sudden you're actually spiking yourself by bringing that sport on, and now kids leave a sport to go play another sport. So you're thinning out the pool of, what sports are going to do well by adding too many things. So we also have, and then what season do they play in? So those things are really on the top of my mind as I look at it, of like what makes sense, what season does make sense, and how is it going to affect the sports that we currently have.
As we look at middle school, this is a foundational pipeline for our programs. And Mike and I have been discussing a lot of different things with our middle schools as far as continuity, and also understanding the administrative structure of what's happening at the middle school levels, which has 4 different directors in the 4 middle schools. We feel like it could be much more operationally targeted, and are looking at some options. But these are just pure numbers of the kids that are participating from the 4 middle schools.
Just from a historical standpoint, the middle schools were just kind of running themselves when I got here. And we decided at North to take over, and so did South, to kind of take over running the middle school. So what happens is there are in the building coordinators, but then Allison Manzella, who's my assistant, is overseeing middle school. So we do a competition schedule for them. We set up their buses, and we work with the middle schools to make sure that that there's an aligned system of how things are happening there. It becomes really taxing for us to try to actually run something that we're not in the actual space. So we're not in the middle school. We're not at the games because there's only the 2 of us to run the high school, same as Keith. So one of the things that came out of NEASC was to potentially have a middle school coordinator, someone they are tasked with just running the 4 middle schools in town. And for us, we think that that's something that's really needed, so that our middle school, because our middle schools are the pipeline to the high school. They are the feeders to our high school. And there's a lot left on the bone that we are not getting because we need more there. We need more coordination there. We need more funding there. So, and obviously funding is a subject right now that, obviously is something that is maybe not on the table right now, but for a future conversation, the middle schools need some more support. And I think putting a person in place to do that will be really helpful.
And we have a meeting, an upcoming meeting in June, where we're going to reconvene the middle school coordinators who, work really hard to provide opportunities for our students. But as you recall, earlier in the year when we discussed the fee memo and the fee structure, right now, our challenge to provide more opportunity to students at middle school is really is our ability to fund it. So right now, the fees that that we charge students to participate don't cover the costs of middle school athletics. And for us to build more, not just interscholastic competition at the middle school level, but also clubs and intramurals, which, as Keith and Mike have indicated, are a big part of the way that we build feeder programs to support our high school programs. This is an area where we'll need to make more investment. The other thing that this will help us, another way that this will help us, and we'll talk about this a little bit when we talk about the recommendations from NEASC, is we're also competing against a lot of the private schools for students, but particularly student athletes who will have opportunities to go to places with, that have really robust facilities and athletic programs. And so also the more money that we're able to invest in middle school will also help us retain a lot of the students and student athletes so that they can then have an opportunity to participate in our high school programs.
Thank you. This slide, I just quickly look at, this just gives us the cross offerings between the middle schools, how many student athletes are involved. But we kind of touched on a good portion of this. So Keith, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that, but this one just is a quick overview of just basic numbers about middle school. So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
When we look at our coaching, obviously there's a few more sports at North than there are for South. But we have the critical positions of athletic director, an assistant athletic director, executive assistant, equipment managers, which are a part-time position, and one certified athletic trainer for each of our buildings. North has found a way to get a lot more volunteers. I've only been in the district, this is my second year. I was the assistant athletic director last year. And so I'm finding that Mike's a great reference point for finding a lot of those ways to kind of expand our staff. So we're going to be working towards more volunteers, but it is a challenge because they get quarried and sorried and fingerprinted, and sometimes they're just, it's just not worth it, but it is worth it in the end. We understand that. So trying to find ways to expand our staff because the ratios are very low, are high, sorry, for what they should be for our teams.
Yeah, the volunteer staff has been a huge supplement for what we need at North. We work really hard at trying to bring people in. Our coaches do a really good job of recruiting volunteers. The one thing, and we'll touch on, is an assistant athletic trainer at this point seems to now be really critical with the overlap of the amount of games that happen at the same time that need medical coverage. So wrestling and ice hockey are winter sports that happen and they play on the same night. And they are state mandated, which we'll get to. So we are really looking at potentially an assistant athletic trainer of somebody who can help us be able to cover games and make sure we cover the mandated games that we have to for the MIA. So how we choose coaches and how we evaluate. So standard between our two schools, HR helps us post the jobs on School Spring, Newton website. We also use the MIAA website. You can post jobs there, and it's a really, people that are looking for jobs know to go to the MIAA website to look at schools to see who has coaching positions. So we all utilize that. I was actually just talking about it today with a couple fall jobs that we have to fill. We go through a very standard process with interviews. We have a committee of my staff, myself, my assistant AD, my executive assistant, our athletic trainer, a parent, a student athlete, and potentially the other coach, meaning if we're hiring for boys lacrosse, we usually bring the girls lacrosse coach in. Those people are the experts on the sport. So when people start talking about it, I can reference that person and be like, I don't know anything about lacrosse. So are they saying the things that make sense? So that is the standard way we do it. And then we ask 10 standard questions. 2 questions vary by sport. So one, we ask them talk about a practice. One, they talk about a sport specific question. So that's kind of the way we do it. End of the season, I do a in-person meeting with every head coach. We talk about everything under the sun for that season, and we do a specific rubric I give them an evaluation number on certain criteria. they get that email to them, and then they respond saying that they agree with everything that we talked about. We also send out surveys to parents and students just to make sure that we're continually getting feedback about what's going well and what we can do better. So that was a big long-winded, so I'm sorry.
And we follow the same process. Both of us have principal approval at the end of that cycle to make sure that the principal who looks at it from an entirely different lens, we bring candidates to them, usually one or two, depending on the position. And that final principal interview is a very important aspect of it.
I skipped that, just moving too quickly, but we do that second round. Myself and Henry, obviously, who's our principal, we sit down with the person. Henry puts his stamp of approval on it, and then that's when we offer the coach after we check references and all that stuff. So apologize for skipping that.
We'll get into a little bit more of the safety when it gets to the NEASC recommendations, but we have core standards of strict enforcement of the MIA safety and eligibility rules, prioritizing stringent return to play decisions, particularly with concussions. Our medical coverage, we have a mandatory physician, licensed athletic trainer required for any of the high contact sports, which is many of them, and continuous training for our coaches, CPR, AED, certification every 2 years, including coaching courses on best practices and making sure they're up to date on their sport.
We mirror each other on this slide right here. Like, I think these things are pretty straightforward that need to be, that we make sure that we cover. I think the medical coverage is the one that I think we both are growing uneasy with. Soccer is now a really high contact sport. Like, we need a trainer at soccer. And so football now, the state has mandated 2 trainers at a football game. So when we go to an away venue, our trainer has to go. So then that leaves the school, if there's an event, that there's no athletic trainer, or we have to hire an EMT, or we have to hire another certified trainer. So there are definitely various times, and that those numbers are growing, where we have to hire outside people to cover events just because we only have one athletic trainer.
Budgeting structure, when we look at the 3 pillars of athletic funding, between 53 and 60% in general comes from our general account. 38 to 45% comes from the user fees. That's very highly variable based on number of participants. South projects that we've had some issues with lower numbers this last year, which adversely affected the budget. Something that you can't make someone play a sport. And then finally, gate and ticket sales, which is very low percentage, and it really depends on the events that you host, as well as the time of the year. There's snowed out basketball games that you expect revenue, and suddenly there's 10 people there when you expected 500. So this is how it is broken down in our 3 pillars. And the users fees really only cover uniforms, transportation, officials, and partial coaching stipends, but it doesn't begin to cover the things that it needs to cover.
Yeah, you could literally just take the coaching stipends, which is over 500,000, and the user fees would just be able to cover that, and it might not in a particular year. So we get the question a lot about what does the user fee cover? Unfortunately, it doesn't cover that much, just because we have so many coaches that we have to hire. And then, like he said, buses to every game. We have to pay the officials to come to our place. We have to get uniforms, and we do 5-year cycles on the uniforms to make sure that we keep everybody in a respectable uniform in Newton. So that is a really quick snapshot of what the user fee covers. And the last piece, gate receipts fluctuate from year to year, meaning we played Newton South this year at Newton North. That's going to be a big gate. We split the Garden City Basketball Classic. So 1 year he hosts, 1 year I host. So the year that I host, we obviously make a lot more money in terms of gate fees. We have the Thanksgiving Day game every other year against Brookline. We played it at Fenway last year. Fortunately, they actually gave us a little of that revenue back. But in a given year, Brookline hosts it, and then we host it. So this is the on year next year for Newton North. We have South coming us, Thanksgiving at us, Garden City at us. So our gate receipts will be a lot bigger than they were this year because we had none of those things.
Sorry, Keith.
Yeah,
Yeah.
come up with some events.
Another thing I'll just say is it's a cost that's not in here. We also support, if we have a game where we're expecting a lot of fans, we will also have deans and other members of the school team that are there to obviously to participate and cheer, but also just to make sure that we're upholding expectation, support, and accountability for all of our community members. And so that we will pay a number of stipends to folks just to make sure that we have coverage, like for the night games, to make sure that we're all representing the values of the school and the district the way that we expect.
I'll add something else about the gate. The larger the event, say Newton North, Newton South, or any of those big events, we also need more police details, which is an unfortunate thing, but it's a necessary thing, and it doesn't come cheaply. But to make sure that we have the proper security at those events. So the bigger the event, the more you spend on security as well.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about the recent NEASC athletic review process. This was a new process for us to go through as a district, and it's also a process that they're developing. The first stage is to create a self-study report, which is a comprehensive self-study that aligns to the 6 NEASC athletic standards. And as we have our two departments, we have at Newton North, we have folks that have been there for a long time together. Mike, Chelsea, and Allison, led a lot of the report working because they had been there for a long time and had a lot of the context. I think Keith had a different challenge with both him and Justin Arbor, the assistant director of athletics, being new. They worked by convening members of the staff to each take on a standards report and did facilitated leadership to make sure that we were reviewing all the documents to provide a really robust self-study, and I've had the good fortune to read a couple of them from other districts, and I would just like to say that ours were very thorough, and very grateful to both Keith and Mike and all of the Newton North and Newton South team members who participated on those committees and did that work. We then, do you want to add something? Then we planned 2 site visits. The site visits were 2 days, where we had, based on the availability of folks to come visit. One of the group that came to Newton North was a little bit larger, just because they were able to have more people who were available. They stayed for 2 days. They interviewed, teachers, students, coaches, counselors, central office folks, boosters, after they'd read the report, to really get a kind of a 360 well-rounded perspective on the experience of all the folks involved in the Newton Athletic program. So they were at Newton North on April 8th and 9th, and they were at Newton South on April 29th and 30th. On the last day of each visit, they give a summary of commendations and recommendations that is then followed a couple weeks later with a full report that they sent. And so we've now received both reports, which we can share if you would like to review them. And it's just really, and it's a really great dialogue to be in. And we shared a memo that summarized the commendations and recommendations, and we'll give a brief overview of them now.
So in terms of commendations that were strengths across both schools, we got a lot of positive feedback about the inclusion in our school. That we try to find a place for everyone, that whether it's through unified sports, no cuts through track. We try not to cut in soccer, where we'll sometimes have 2 teams of, we'll have 40 kids playing freshman soccer. Like, we try to find places for people. It doesn't always work, but we work at it. And so our kids also talked about the accessibility for our staff. Like, they always feel like they can come into our offices, that they can come talk to us. Our captain's council, we started a captain's council 5 years ago at Newton North, where we do leadership training. Our assistant athletic directors have led the charge on that, and it's grown into something really cool, where we now are bringing in young leaders. So we bring in the captains, and halfway through we bring the young leaders in, so that we can start working with our younger kids to become better leaders. So there have been a lot of things that we've done. I'm just touching on a few of them. And again, I think a lot of it is in your memo and in the report as well.
Operational excellence. We had very high quality coaches across the board. That was something that was spoken about by all our shareholders. The accessible athletic directors, Mike and I are there. We live there basically. And the kids know that they can see us, talk to us. We care about what's going on there. So that's a positive. Streamlined, we've changed the registration process so that it's multilingual, which now has helped many people do the registration process, which is a lot of details, and trying to do it in a second language can be a big challenge. Then equity focused resource allocation, trying to make sure that we are spreading it out amongst all of our programs instead of just the highlight programs. Safety and innovation, we've tried to keep increasing with technology as far as some of the safety things that we've done. South this year invested in safer helmets, which is a concussion prevention mechanism, and it worked. There was 0 concussions in our football team this year, which is pretty much unheard of. It was an investment, but it was for the safety of the kids.
Another thing that we discussed in the feedback discussions with our visitors were just the culture of high expectations for everybody involved in our athletic programs, coaches, students, spectators. We sustain a very high level of high expectations, high support, and high accountability that from time to time means we have to have difficult conversations, but we do in service, to our values and our commitments.
I think from a recommendation standpoint, just a couple of key points. We are, and I'm as guilty of this as being reactive instead of proactive to issues that pop up. Like, we are the fixers essentially in athletics. So when things come up, we deal with it. But I think one of the things that came out of it was just having a proactive 5-year plan in terms of like if there needs to be improvements or things that we foresee coming down the line that we should be planning for in the future. And we do some of that. And then there's also that part of it where we need to do a better job of just making sure we're being proactive in those areas. And then the other thing, and I'll let Keith go, is I think we're both doing things around mental health that we do, he does in the Lions Legacy, and we do in Captain's Council. It's student driven, and then it's supported by athletics, but just addressing it in a more formal way with adults maybe coming in to have conversations because it is something that needs to be constantly talked about. And so that's something that through a professional development, we potentially will start looking at how we can implement that at Newton North.
And as we spoke about before, when you look at the health, wellness, and equity, we're both very concerned about the 500-to-1 ratio of student athletes to a trainer during a season. Even if it's just a practice and there's a game going on, there's still kids that get injured in practice, and making sure that they are taken care of is a high need for both of us. We want to also make sure that the fees don't become such a creative barrier to the inclusiveness that we've seen as a very big thing for us. Strategic planning, they mentioned in both our reports to have reviews of what our mission is to make sure it's in alignment with Newton Public Schools and each of our buildings, which may have some intricacies in there as well. And then also just some of the clear equity between booster club, what monies and what things they buy compared to what is budget. Sometimes there's some ambiguity in there as to where that is.
So the last thing I think we want to touch on, I think this is the last slide, is the school dismissal time. It has definitely created a barrier that we have to manage on a regular basis. In the Bay State Conference, we have actually made a rule that schools accommodate a 4:30 start for us because of the dismissal. And it definitely creates some tension around, if a bus is late or if something goes sideways that we can't get there on time. I think there might have been something about dismissals, and it is part of it because of the fact that we are asking schools to make an accommodation for us to play at a certain time. And I think for us to not be able to make some accommodations to get our kids there in a reasonable amount of time is the reason why we have those dismissals. We are very cognizant of like not overdoing that. And so we are very thoughtful about how we do that, but it's affecting youth sports. Like youth groups are not happy with us because we're on the fields too long. we have to spread out where we're practicing and different things. So it definitely is something that is a challenge, and we deal with it because we knew what we were signing up for, and it's a serious challenge.
So Mike's responding to a member question that says, can we somehow convince our league to schedule competitions, games, meets differently so that our kids don't have to leave class early and miss class? And the answer is we do it sometimes, and they accommodate us sometimes. I used to meet Mike in Natick High School because we were in the Bay State League together, and our kids waited around for hours until Newton North was done. And that creates a busing issue and a safety issue and a coverage issue. So,
And it's complicated because as someone, as an educator who really likes research-based practices, our school start time, it aligns to what the research says about what is best for adolescent brains and adolescent learners, right? But the flip side of the coin is that means that we get out late, and in order to do athletic competitions, we also have to, dismiss students so that they will miss class. So it's there's it's a dynamic tension, right, with trade-offs.
And there's several sports that are facility reliant, such as Nordic skiing or alpine skiing. We had one young lady who missed her math class, I think 8 straight weeks on a Tuesday, because that's when they do the alpine. That's the only time they do the alpine. So,
Track is another one.
Track
Like
is another one.
we run league track meets every week. It starts at 4:00. If you're not there at 4, it's starting with or without you. So like it's out of our hands. Like we can't have our kids show up late and then they don't get the opportunity to compete. So it is a tricky dynamic that we try to continue to navigate. But it's definitely something there that we need to, think about and work on.
So there was only one other question that you didn't cover. Thank you for wrapping the questions into your presentation, which is the members would like the numbers on discrete athletes numbers, not including multiplayers. So they just want to know how many people are participating. Is that something that you can get to us at some point? Okay. All right. Little homework for you there.
And before we close, I just want to close on a positive. I know we were talking about the recommendations. Just want to give a shout out to our facilities department, because in the recommendations where we talked a lot about the leaks that impact the weight rooms in both Newton North and Newton South. And since we've had our NEASC accreditation visit, we've also had repairs to the roofs in both of those places. And so I just want to shout out Dave Stickney and the facilities department for doing really meaningful work for us that is going to make a big difference.
I just want to say thank you to the school committee for allowing this NEASC. When I first had it thrown kind of at me as Pat was retiring, I was like, this is going to be dreadful. But at the end of the day, gave us an opportunity to really drill down and really understand what Newton South was and what it can be. And so I appreciate the opportunity to do it.
I will echo that. And I told Gene this, I was feeling the same way. And this was a great self-reflection for me after 5 years to take a look at every little nuance of athletics. And we've gotten better because of it. So there are things that we realized we needed to tweak or do differently or not do or do better. So this was definitely a great process for us to grow over in Newton North, for sure.
Well, thanks for taking it on. You look at me spreading joy all over your lives, but I know it felt more like nausea when I brought it up the first time. So thank you.
All right. Well, you hit it out of the park, but we'll start with questions over here.
See what you did there.
And Ben, if you had one, and then Tamika.
Saw what you did there. Nice. So I'll give my tongue-in-cheek pitch that if we ever do a future sport, we should think about curling. As I was a former international curler myself, when I actually was in shape. So more seriously, I'm curious about 2 questions. One, are you hearing, you raised the fee issue, Dr. Roundtree, which I appreciate. Are we hearing anything regarding, so I hear the demand for increases of fees. Are we hearing anything about the fee structure having prevented some students from being able to access sports they would otherwise like to have? Is that relatively constant now, or just a rough sense of what, if anything, you're hearing?
Yeah, so that would be, I would want to be able to confer with the middle school athletic coordinators. I have not heard of too many instances where the cost has been a barrier. I do think that we have ways to provide scholarships and make sure that opportunity is present. Also, there's a cap. All right, so if you have, there's a cap for a family, I think it's $1,200 Yeah.
Just with the new fee structure. Yeah.
So I think that, we do take deliberate steps to do that. I think that, just to highlight one aspect of it at the middle school level, we have, increased fees, but still there's a gap. I can come back to you with the exact number, but I think that
Just more clear, if you heard anything, I just want
Yeah.
early warning signals. That's all. I'm just watching out for you.
But I do know that it's in the neighborhood of $25,000, the difference between just for middle school, the difference between, what the athletics cost and what we're collecting in fees. And so we do need to think about kind of,
Sustainable structures. Yeah.
sustainable structures and making it affordable for families.
Asking, are there student athletes that don't compete because of the fees?
Correct. Like anything you're hearing about, like concerns of not being able to compete as a result of
So
fees. Yeah.
we actually do have a waiver process
Mhm.
that, probably would be too much to get into right now, but we do have a way that we make sure student athletes aren't turned away because of the fee.
Okay, great.
We've had a few instances where kids have had to make the decision between just doing a club sport, like AAU or club soccer. The parents are making a decision, am I going to pay the school fee or am I going to pay the travel fee?
Got it.
And a few kids have made that decision.
Okay, thank you. And then just for my own edification, what do we do if there are students who, this is an unusual question, if there are sort of accessibility oriented sports or any other kind of accommodations for folks that would like to participate in some sort of sport, but may not necessarily be able to participate in a conventional manner? What exists, if anything?
Talk about
in that front?
unified.
Yeah, so that's a good example. Yeah.
In the last 2 years, we've had several students who have been on the Nordic ski team who were special education students and had the opportunity to be part of the team. Wherever accommodations can be made, we do make them. Some of the sports where it's a cutting sport, because you can't have a large roster, that's a challenge. But our unified programs have been very, very well populated, and so give them opportunities, and to expand those programs might be the next option.
We've had 75 kids on the unified basketball team, and we just figure out game to game who plays and who doesn't. Track had 80 kids, so like we find a way, or we just point them in the direction of a sport that we feel like is safer and that we can provide supervision that they need.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate it.
Ben?
Thank you, guys. This was a lot of information. All the work that went into it. Wanted to ask about the boosters. Can you give us ballparks of how much we get from them and what kind of stuff they buy? And maybe the biggest question, is there anything we can do to help try to rile up the boosters to put them
So Newton North boosters have done an amazing job. Like we have now had a parent-led booster club started by Linda Swain 3 years ago, right? Yeah. Which is changed the game for Newton North. Like we were doing fundraising and we were doing stuff, and like to try to take that on top of everything else we were doing was just unsustainable. Linda and Kevin Conroy took it on. They changed the game for us. Now Sheila Bootsy and Rebecca Schmidt do it. We did a 5K. I don't want to say that too loud, but
It's a tender topic. Oh, you're all 5King us.
Yeah. So we raised around $50,000 in the last 2 events we've had. So it combined. And so we're doing a really good job. And thanks to our booster club, we try to answer your other question, and I can let Keith speak on his, but as an athletic department, we try to provide everything that's an essential to a sport. So if it's balls, uniforms, if there's whatever is essential to that particular sport, we feel like we are responsible for. There are above and beyonds, like soccer wants a practice goal, or somebody wants a practice jersey. Things that aren't necessarily essential to the sport, we start to look to the boosters to help us with that. And then we have large ticket items. We bought a wrestling mat that we needed. The boosters, well, the district ended up buying it, but the boosters were initially helping us get it. A lacrosse net that we needed out on the track to keep lacrosse balls from hitting the track athletes running around. The boosters have helped us with that. And they do a ton of advocacy for us, which has helped us with lights and turf and Albemarle and different things that we have needed on the north side. So I cannot praise them enough in terms of what they're doing to help us.
I can echo the same thing. The Newton South Booster Club is a little bit older, and it was a little bit more established, but many of the things that we have at the building, the banners in our side, the field house, they also helped with raising the ideas of the lights at Brandeis, and pretty much the same. We're doing the same thing. Our booster clubs are doing the same thing. They've been fantastic, but things like senior nights, year-end banquets for the team, the banquets where they get a meal together and celebrate themselves at the end of the year. Those typically come from a booster club raising funds, or the teams themselves raising funds.
Great, thank you.
Mika, then Jason.
So, thank you for being here, and I agree. Booster clubs are amazing. So that. Few questions I'm going to buzz through real quick. Transportation needs have fluctuated over the years. How are we doing right now in terms of being able to meet the demand for busing? Or how are we doing?
We're doing fairly well. I would say that Regina Moody has been fantastic with helping us find avenues to do that. I think the biggest challenges on the transportation are the no late bus anymore, which has eliminated there are some kids who don't play because they don't have a way home at night. The intercity busing for intercity events between Newton North, Newton South is a challenge. You know, we have our kids at different facilities that they're walking 1.5 miles, 2 miles along Route 9 or Parker Street for us, which scares me to death. So some of that intercity busing that we don't do anymore, except for the middle schools, is a little bit of a challenge.
That was my very next question. The after-school bus that was cut, what, a year, 2 years ago?
Two.
That we couldn't support, and how the students have been affected or impacted, and whether you've noticed, and it sounds, Keith, as though you have.
It's affecting us on the north side, maybe not quite to the level it is in south. I think that one of the bigger things we're not talking about is the cost of a bus. Like you are locked.
He knows.
Yeah, yeah. You are locked in a 4-hour bus no matter what, and that number is growing to an astronomical rate. So transportation, the line item for transportation that Amy Mistro and I talk about is going through the roof. And so we are constantly trying to manage when we take buses, how often we take buses, where we take them, which company we use. So there's a lot of different stuff to that. So that's another, obviously a layer that you guys have spoken about, but that's a layer to this.
We put 3 teams the other day on a bus to go to a place to drop at 3 different places because we played Westford Academy and they played 3 different places, but we put 3 full teams on there, even though their start times weren't the same, their end times weren't the same, but I was like, I just saved $1,000 for having, instead of 3 buses, we had 1. So we try and do the best we can with that, but sometimes there's challenges in that.
Okay, appreciate all that, and appreciate the complicated struggle it is to get our students where they need to be in an appropriate manner. I commend you for that. So traveling to away games and students being pulled out from class in order to go to the games. That wasn't my question, but I ask it each and every time athletics comes up. Because especially as we're looking to really tie together that correlation between student performance and access to instructional time. And this is a bright line area where, Keith, you cited Nordic skier, I think. But it does come up in multiple sports where students are getting pulled out consistently on the same day of the week for the same subject. And it's really impacting, it can have the potential to impact student performance. So I'm happy to hear that you're keeping that at the forefront. I know I saw it on the South kind of feedback or loop, but I didn't see it as much for North, but I know it's an issue that does impact and touch many across the board.
A couple of little tidbits on that.
Yeah.
This is just a couple examples. Baseball. No lights at baseball stadiums. So they have to start at 4 o'clock to make sure they can get the game in before darkness. cross country, like they run league meets, same as track. Permits in another town. So like Weymouth, it just comes to mind where like I know they have to be off of fields at a certain time, and the commute to get to Weymouth creates that we have to be there at a certain time or they can't accommodate a game. So all of these things, like we sit in league meetings and we work on all of these things to make sure we can get the games in. Our games, our league time is actually supposed to be 3:45 to start. We can never do that because we don't even get out until 3:45. So they give us the 4:30 start time. And I feel obligated to have to get our kids there at that time if they're making that accommodation for us, for a number of reasons that are their problems, but become our problems because of when we get out of school, if that makes sense. So like, that's some of the,
No, I
the
hear
issue.
you.
And so like, I really do take it seriously. And like Henry and I have spent a lot of time talking about how we do this in a way that like is the least impactful. And it's a very difficult juggling act to try to pull off.
So I think the thing I say each time that we talk about this, we're not looking to redo the equation or rework the schedule, but thinking of tweaks that we can make to adjust for this issue because it does have such a large impact to the students.
Absolutely.
And there I'm thinking maybe we're rotating the schedule. We're keeping the same schedule, but we're doing an A, B, C. I don't know what it is. You guys are the educators. You figure it out. But I'm just putting it out there as a consistent issue.
Yep.
To the question about hiring outside people to cover events, because you only have one athletic trainer. If you hired an assistant athletic trainer, how many additional people might you still need to hire? Say, if there was, an overlap of
Never needed,
sport.
I've never needed three.
Yeah.
Only ever
Me
needed
either.
I've
three.
never needed three.
Yeah.
You've never needed three,
I haven't either.
So they each want one assistant athletic director.
which would be sufficient to cover
Yes.
all your needs.
Trainer,
Athletic
yes,
trainer, yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And then the last thing is just a plug for everybody to go see some of our amazing athletes. It's really fun. They're high skilled, really entertaining, and apparently they could use our gate fee dollars. So
Yeah.
thank you, gentlemen.
You're welcome.
Jason, then Ari, then Linda.
Thank you very much. It was I agree, very thorough presentation. A lot of interesting content. I'll start by saying, Jean, your suggestion to share the reports would be great. If for no other reason, then it would be awesome to propagate them. And it's great to hear that it was a productive experience. Second, I was the member who asked the question about the start times. We've heard it a lot in the community, just with similar examples to what you all have described. I agree with Tamika that anything we can do around the edges, but without being mindful of what I'm about to say, because a lot of work has gone into the start time, and I know that there's research underpinning that, and we want that. We also really want our student athletes to be able to compete and participate, and they've got to be in class. I mean, the story you told breaks my heart, and I think that's something that we've got to quantify. We need to know, in my opinion, how many students are missing how many classes, and then because that helps us as a school committee, and it's a school department thing. It helps us understand if there's a bigger equation we need to be solving, and other things that have come up in this arena are, we've moved to longer block schedules. I know that's put a lot of change management issues on the educators to move to longer schedules, but my understanding is that interfaces poorly with the later start time because it can amplify the number of classes a student may miss in a particular area, or amplify the impact if you're missing one longer period versus one shorter period. So I think we should start tracking and evaluating how to address this holistically, not just thinking about athletics. At the right time, it's a big issue, and I know it touches a lot of things, and I don't want to mention it lightly without recognizing that it would be a major change effort to do anything on the type of structures I just mentioned. The third is, clubs and intramurals. I think it's great. Both of you made comments around this, and Keith around, really thinking about interest year to year and how to manage that. Mike, it sounds like that the thinking around clubs and intramurals is tricky because there's space and dismissal issues and stuff like that. I guess it sounded to me like we're solving for, people who want, students who want to participate. And I guess I'm wondering, one thing that I've heard in the community is, obviously athletics, unlike, there are cuts at some point. And so it was great to hear about the freshman opportunities, but at some point, I'm wondering how much do we think lack of participation is because you weren't able to participate in the sport you were interested in?
I mean, I'll just say first, I think the place I would say that I'm the most concerned about cuts is at the middle school level, because we do have to cut from the middle school sports. I think as I mentioned, because of, funding. And I think that the challenge is that, that student that doesn't get the opportunity in middle school that can like branch them away from, from the sport, because it's a very developmental time, right? And so I think that if we're thinking about, where we are making cuts when we want to be more inclusive, I would say we would want to start first in middle school. Yeah.
I do think that is a place where we need to focus a lot of attention. We lose a lot of athletes that never come to North and South, that we've never even had an opportunity to spend any time with, share our programs with. And I know off the top of my head, probably 10 different kids that have gone to Xaverian in different schools, just that are Newton kids that would have been at Newton North and would get a better academic experience at Newton North than some of those other schools. So yeah, I do think the middle school is probably the place. But I'm not sure at Newton North if we're losing kids not playing sports. I do think as they progress, they may see that it's harder to make a team, and then they choose not to play. But I think when they come into the high school, a lot of kids do participate. And I feel strongly that we have a robust freshman class of kids that come to Newton North to play sports. They do, as they go along, then that probably is a little different.
It's a very complicated equation you all are balancing, and I think you're asking the right questions, is how do we drive participation? I am interested in that group, and it would be interesting to know, as we solve the complicated things around space and dismissals, if there are particular clubs or intramurals, like what you're talking about with how they build momentum, et cetera, that would really solve the problem of if there are folks who want to participate and can't find the thing they love. But thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you guys for this. This is super, super in depth. As someone who is a more recent graduate than some of our other folks on the committee, it's even so cool to see how much our athletics have grown since I graduated in 2019. So want to just plug real quick the unified track and basketball team and seeing that grow. It kind of became more prominent when I was in high school. So seeing it grow to the levels it's at, it's amazing. I do have a question regarding the athletic training situation, if we can go back to that. I know you touched on it just a little bit briefly, but so are we hiring like per diem, like athletic trainers or EMTs in a sense? And that's kind of what we do at our middle school as well. Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Nolan, I think this is more of a request for you. I'm going to pull a Jason and Ben. Can we potentially get...
Oh, good.
So
Sure, I appreciate it.
just some numbers at the high school level of what the cost is for our per diems, for athletic trainers, when we're seeing that overlap needing to happen. My cousin, who's an athletic trainer, she always chirps on me about this, so I hope she
You want to know cost per diem and then how much we spend?
Yeah, how much we
Okay.
spend. Yeah, perfect. Thank you, guys.
Linda, you're up.
Oh, boy. First of all, thank you. This was fantastic. And truly, you are so much appreciated. We talk amongst this committee so much about academics, but our kids live and breathe for their sports. Perhaps even more so than we would wish at times, right? It is what makes their high school years. So really appreciate it. 4 things for you to noodle on. Number 1, which I think I brought this up maybe via email to you quite some time ago, and I understand it's a Bay State decision, but there are some folks at Newton North who feel like there's some inequities because the home track is not at New Balance. And So I just wanted to make sure you were aware of that. Number one, it does seem ironic to me. It is like a stone's throw away. And in fact, Jim Davis, the founder of New Balance, happens to live in the North District. And so it would be wonderful at some point if we could convince the Bay State League to make that switch.
Can I say something about that really quick?
Yeah.
We're talking about that right now in the Bay State Conference. Probably shouldn't be saying that right now, but we are. The cost is through the roof.
Yeah.
Their league fees are like almost double ours. So we are working on a fee structure that helps us be able to pay to do it. And New Balance has to open up time slots for us to actually be able to run because the meets go 3 to 4 hours. But just so you have an idea that it's in conversation in our league.
That's wonderful
Yeah.
to hear. I echo the sentiments, particularly around middle school. We do lose kids to private schools like Xaverian, can never say that. But we also lose kids who don't participate in middle school sports because they got cut. And that breaks my heart. Middle school kids getting cut, like it stops them from playing, and it is so good for their mental and physical health. Along those lines, plug for field hockey at the middle school level. I know Dual County, most of the Dual County League has it, and several of the Bay State League has it at the middle school level. I think my third thing is I think everybody on this committee has heard me and as well as Mike talk about the schedule. It's near and dear to my heart. During the field hockey season, there were weeks where my daughter would miss 2 out of her 3 math classes each week. She would come home in tears telling me her teacher was terrible, that she hated math, that she needed a tutor. Lo and behold, the season ended and she started doing well. And that teacher became her favorite teacher through her entire 4 years of high school. And she simply wasn't in class. And I know I'm speaking to the choir. You guys are given the schedule that you're given, but it's something that we as a city have to address. It gets like swept under the rug quietly, but 2 out of 3 math classes a week, that's crazy. And then finally, the fees. We've talked about that. I'm really concerned about the fees that we approved this year. For most sports, it's $480. Football, even worse. And I know we have a waiver, but there are families where maybe they don't quite qualify for a waiver. And so they talk to their student, like they have to make it's a financial decision at this point. It's not like, Mom, I need a check to play, soccer. It's a financial decision. And it's like, I don't know what we do because at the same time, it doesn't cover our costs. So I get that. But $480 has just not sat well with me ever since we passed those fees, and I don't have a solution for it. But it's what I worry about? I worry what I call it the fringe athletes. So the kids who are kind of sort of, maybe they'll play. I think we'll lose them, and some of those kids are the kids that would benefit the most from playing. I have one final comment. I just huge shout out. And Mike, you might not even know the story. I don't know. You might. Last year's a state champion boys soccer team. Do you know that they had one player on the team who said to his teammates, I can't play. I need to get a job. And the teammates said, how much do you need to raise or earn from your job? And they said, we will cover it. We will chip in. And what to me was so remarkable, it was that this wasn't a starting player. And it was, they cared so much about the team. And I tell this story because it's indicative of what the 3 of you are doing and making happen. So appreciate it all.
Thank you. I did not know that story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
isn't that
that's
amazing?
pretty cool. Yeah. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you.
We appreciate all the support, and I think I'd be remiss to not say the community at Newton North. Like, there's no way we can do this without the community of people at our school. Newton North is a really unique place. Our principal, assistant principal, deans, our counseling staff. Like, I have gotten to know so many different people because of the interactions we have around athletics, where a teacher needs some help with a kid who may be struggling. You know, there may be something with a kid going on that we have to deal with a counselor. Two of the deans are coaches, and two of them are just really, the other two are just really supportive. We have a great community at Newton North. And so there's zero way I could do this job without the people that support us every day.
I have to say the same thing. Coming into a district after being in the college game for a while, understanding Newton South and understanding the community has been an unbelievable experience for me. Fantastic administrators, and appreciate you guys. Know how much effort and work and difficulties you guys have. We just appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we have 3 topics left. And we do need to get through them tonight because we need a couple of votes. So I will remind everyone to try not to be repetitive, try to be tight with your comments and questions, not to limit debate, but to try to be concise. So we will first do the self-study overview of tech, engineering, computer science, and digital literacy.
So this is Liz Butler Everett. You've seen her before with science. And Stephen Ritendi, Director of Technology. I know it's been a long night.
Oh,
but we have been dying to
you
hear your
all as
report.
well, I'm sure.
Thank you.
Where do you want to go? Slide.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for hanging in there. My name is Liz Butler Everett. I'm the Director of Science and Engineering, pre-K through 12.
Stephen Ritendi, Director of Information Technology and Library Services.
And this past year, we've had the privilege of working together for the first time extensively, right? And the collaboration was brought about maybe unexpectedly. We were asked to do a self-study of technology, and we sort of both went, is that not you? And then we ended up here a year later. So I am the Science and Engineering Director. That's how I describe my role. The state calls it Science, Technology, and Engineering, which is how there's some overlap in title that we have, and we'll talk a little bit about what that overlap might look like in the classroom. So over the past year, we've been in the process of doing a curriculum review cycle for engineering and digital literacy and computer science. We are in the first year of that curriculum review cycle, and that first year is called a self-study. I'm going to go pretty quickly because you've actually heard 2 of these already, and it's 9:18. This is our curriculum review committee. It is made up of teachers, administrators in the science and engineering department, in computer science, in DLCS. And the only thing I want to point out is that on this committee, there are so many years of experience in Newton. One of these teachers at some point in the year said to me in a meeting, talking about his experience in the district, well, you know, in 1994, and that was his first year in the district. He is a middle school engineering teacher. I did not tell him that I could have been in his middle school class in 1994, but it's the truth. So there's many years of experience, and it's been a pleasure to work with this crew. The engineering and DLCS vision statement grew out of this committee. And the only thing I'll point out here is the overlap with the portrait of a learner competencies. I would bet that any discipline leader up here would tell you that their department has a lot of overlap with the portrait of the learner competencies, but engineering and DLCS, I think, beats them all. I'll show you on the next slide, you'll see where there's overlap between DLCS and the engineering practices. And if you look right in the middle there, you see the shared practices, the overlap between our 2 departments. problem solving processes, modeling and abstraction, data analysis and evidence-based reasoning, iteration and improvement, systems thinking, and collaboration and communication. And that you can draw pretty clear parallels between the work that students are doing in computer science, in digital literacy, in engineering, and the portrait of a learner. I know myself leading a team of fourth grade Lego leaguers that I do on my spare time, that there is no place that I see my fourth grader engaging in the kind of competencies that we see under the portrait of a learner than when I see her engaging with Lego robotics and trying to solve problems. So.
Let's skip a bunch of these slides because I think you have already seen these in other ones. I don't know, Liz, if there's anything you want to stop me on. I think we've gone through this with all of the other ones. So with that, we'll lead right to our first finding. And so we're going to take turns going back and forth on the findings. Finding number one, I will take, which is really around elementary students having limited and inequitable access to curriculum and instruction on DLCS and engineering standards. We don't have dedicated time for DLCS in our schools except for the research standards, which do show up in the DLCS standards, and those will be covered in library curriculum. On our science side, Open SciEd has provided access to engineering standards in K through 2, and some of the continued rollout may involve that, although as you can see from the chart that was in the report, and it's also linked here to a slide later on, that the total amount of time we have available for science in grades 3 through 5 doesn't nearly come close to what DESE assumes when they build out the standards for schools. Do you want to say anything more on that? Pretty much. All right. Recommendations for district deliberation. Oh, and I think there was one question around the time, which was after we implement Open SciEd in grades 3 through 5, will that time change? I believe the time that's allocated for science is not changing our schedule. So there will be no change overall in that time configuration. But Liz, you can correct me if I'm right or wrong.
Yep, the amount of time we have for science is not changing after we implement Open SciEd. We still have a fraction of the time that is assumed by the Department of Education. But someone also asked a question about what about the schedule change for next year at the elementary level, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And the one small shift that we see in the amount of time that we could count towards like a science engineering.
The recommendations is really to look and to identify explicitly where in the instructional minutes we can incorporate more engineering and DLCS standards. And so as we will talk about where we're getting an opportunity to do that next year. But I think there's also an opportunity to look at to look across curricular areas and take a look at where the standards that we aren't able to cover right now could be embedded, because they can be. And you know, examples of those include a lot of the well, when you look at things like media literacy, we have opportunities to put those into history and social sciences. We have the opportunities to put them in other places. And I really think it's just a matter of taking the time to explicitly define where in the curriculum they can go, which we have not really had an opportunity to do.
I want to just stick with this one finding for a minute longer, because I think that this is the largest gap in what we offer to students right now in Newton Public Schools is the elementary instruction around DLCS and engineering. We have we have very few, very limited instructional minutes dedicated to DLCS, only what's available in library. And we have a reduced overall instructional minutes for science, and that impacts engineering. And as compared to other districts around Newton, we don't offer any special that is a sort of STEM special or what we've been sort of calling an innovation lab special. We offer no comprehensive coding introduction, robotics introduction, anything like that at the elementary level. And while we have 5 findings here, this is the one that really stands out to me as being a place where if there is opportunity to invest, this is where we need to invest. We can think about vertical and horizontal alignment later on, but if we don't have a foundation where students are getting exposed to engineering and coding and computer science in K through 5, then we're not doing our job here, and we can't build upon that in middle and high school.
We have already seen excitement with limited numbers of pilots we're doing this year around coding in particular. That we've been able to do during some win blocks. Students leave them quite happy, quite excited, and hoping for more. And in fact, wondering what's happening next year for them. They want it. They're eager for it. They love it. They're excited by it.
Moving on to the middle school level for engineering. Right now, there's one engineering teacher at each of the 4 middle schools. And one of the things that we noticed in doing this review that I've heard from my engineering teachers over the last few years is that there's an inequitable amount of time that students are spending in engineering classes. And so at one middle school in the city, there are students spending twice the number of minutes over their 3 years in middle school as another school in the city, just because of the way that FTEs are allocated, the way that schedules pan out. That makes it very difficult to align curriculum across the city to ensure that the curriculum is adequately funded. And so moving forward, we need to make sure that the schedules are better aligned across our middle schools and that our FTEs are distributed in a way where if we choose to invest in the same number of minutes across the city for engineering, we have to make sure that the FTEs support that as well.
Finding number 3 is parallel to the engineering finding, although we don't have time, again, for middle and high school DLCS, right? So this in some ways, this report was easily wrote itself because we don't have the time to do the standards that we currently have in place in the state. And for DLCS, the only place where they potentially show up right now is in library, but a library ends up being sort of an optional activity for the classroom teachers to bring their classrooms to do research projects and to do other things. So even those standards are not necessarily getting hit by students as they come in. So some of the recommendations here kind of deal with an overlap between engineering and with coding potentially. And we think that's a good place to do it. So as Liz mentioned, taking a look at middle school engineering, one of the things that we are recommending is to do a pilot in a robotics unit in the middle school engineering class. So we have the engineering class in existence. Robotics is a great way to combine those coding skills along with the engineering standards as well. So that is a key recommendation that we hope to pilot in the coming year. We also, again, this is a parallel recommendation to the elementary, which is to take a look at cross-curricular collaboration to identify where DLCS standards can be incorporated into other curricular areas. And then finally, to identify and develop additional courses for implementation at middle, should the schedule allow it. We think there may be some opportunities there as we look at the middle school schedule in the coming years, and to also look at high school courses. We'll talk a little bit more about computer programming and Finding 5, which is really where a lot of the DLCS standards come into play at the high school.
As I said at the beginning, there are a number of engineering teachers who've been in the district a long time, and 2 of those teachers who've been in the district about 30 years were on this committee with us, and they built the engineering program themselves at the middle school level and at the high school level. And so there is engineering programming in middle school and high school, and maybe some, you've known some people have taken the engineering electives at the high schools. Those programs are different at North and South, and I've already told you that the programming looks different across the city for middle school engineering. What we hope to do is make sure that there's more vertical and horizontal alignment across the city in order to use the expertise that we have in the city and make sure that students have equitable experiences across the city. We also are very interested in looking at what happens to engineering and DLCS, but this specific finding, sorry, is engineering. What happens to engineering if we're able to put in place K-5 engineering experiences for students, how we might then find that participation rates in the high school increases, and we don't see the same disparities that we're seeing now across race, gender, and special education status at the high school. We actually see some students being able to engage in engineering at the middle and high school level in a way that they aren't necessarily able to engage in it in their core classes. So we see that ELL students, in particular newcomers, are able to engage in engineering electives, and we see a higher rate of participation in those engineering electives than is true in the general population. And just in our walkthroughs as well, we were able to look at engagement of students and see that there were students who were very engaged in their engineering classes at the middle school level. And we know that that would also happen at the elementary level. I mentioned already my 4th grader who is very interested in robotics. her favorite class to go to when she goes to school. And the only thing she really wants to go through in the entire week is her STEM class where she gets to do Lego robotics at school. And so I know that there's this population of students sitting at the elementary level, but also a population that we see at the middle school level that could be incredibly engaged by these disciplines if we were able to figure out a way to run them in the district.
And Finding Five is around high school computer science. I think most of you know that our high school computer science courses are electives offered through the mathematics departments. I used to be in charge of that at one of the high schools. So I did oversee that for a very long time. The CS programs at the high schools, however, do vary in content and sequencing between the schools. It is quite a challenge to bring math in alignment between the two schools, and then computer science is another challenge on top of that, given that those teachers actually teach both, right? So you'll have math teachers in a department who then teach a computer science class or two computer science classes in addition to their regular classes. It becomes a challenge of time and energy to try to bring the two schools together as well. However, it's, I think, something that we should take on that challenge of. As with engineering, we have the same or similar gaps in gender and racial identity of our students, as well as students on IEP enrolling in the computer science classes. There is a strong desire on the part of CS educators to actually collaborate more and to have more training. It just has not been something that was provided in years past. So what do we need? We really do need time and resources in order to get the CS teachers from both schools together, to train them up, to give them time to collaborate. We have, in my thinking here, and the two math department chairs at both high schools would say that, especially given the math review going on, that their time is limited in terms of being able to try to lead that work. And so if we are able to identify a teacher leader, potentially through a stipend that can help lead that work, I think it would go a long way towards unifying the programs across the two schools. There was a question about electives. So I think the question at the high school was, should engineering and computer science be in electives, or are there other places to do that? And I think there was also questions around state requirements. And I know Mass Core is changing, but I did look back at Mass Core just to see what it actually mentioned around anything around computer science. And it mentions pretty much, well, the only thing, it does mention it twice. So it does mention that a computer science course could be a substitute for one of the 4 units of math or one of the 3 units of science. To count towards the Mass Core program, as long as it is a robust enough program and involves enough math or enough science to count. But otherwise, there is no specific time dedicated in Mass Core that says there needs to be a requirement. There are 5 units of like other courses that you can take, and those courses are competing with each other at the high school, right, and competing for attention. I think it would be hard to find a place to stick computer science into math courses that already exist. I think the 2 high school department chairs have talked about, are there opportunities to put more engineering into the science courses that are currently offered, but it is still a challenge, but something that they're interested in looking at going forward as well. So action steps for next year. I think we're going to jump back and forth on these. So I'm going to start with the elementary pilot. So part of the elementary school schedule adjustment, woohoo, is going to offer the opportunity in grade 3 to have every 3rd grade class have an extra library class essentially per week, where they can experience more engineering and DLCS standards. So that is one of our big hopes, it is what we will get off next year once we've got all the schedule completely settled. And so we are looking at different opportunities for what that might look like. We do imagine doing some coding and robotics combination, as well as spending sort of like a little bit in the beginning of the year talking about responsible use of technology. It's the first year when they have a Chromebook available to them. So it's a great opportunity to also incorporate some of the initial beginning typing skills, getting them going on some of those things. So a whole gambit of possible things to look at, which we're hoping to, we've already started looking at what those standards would be now, and to move forward. And we hope that there's an opportunity to expand what we're able to do in grade 3 next year in future years.
And Stephen already mentioned the idea of the middle school pilots, where we are looking to pilot a robotics computer science unit at the this says 1 to 2 middle schools, but still up for debate how many middle schools might pilot that, with a similar list of suppliers, companies that we're looking at to work with.
You're next.
Okay. In order to ensure that we have more alignment at the middle school and high school engineering courses, we're hoping to do a few things. So one, to increase opportunities during professional development for those teachers to meet with each other across the city, make sure that we emphasize the alignment across the city. And then also our hope is to identify a engineering teacher leader who could hold some of that work for us. Right now, there are fewer engineering teachers at each level than there are science teachers, and those courses live within the STE departments. And so at my middle school citywide, there are 36 science teachers and 4 engineering teachers, and it would be great to have an engineering teacher leader, possibly from the high school, meet with all of the engineering teachers across the district, including the middle school engineering teachers at that time, so that they could work on some of the vertical and horizontal alignment.
And there's parallel in terms of high school computer science and thinking about a regular cadence of meetings devoted to really specific tasks. First of all, to reviewing current curriculum and getting all the teachers of the computer science programs across both schools together to review that current curriculum, propose a common sequencing, develop proposals for resources. Right now, they are often scrounging, like what free tool can we use to compile our programs in, as opposed to having a very cohesive set of resources. And then create paths to increase underrepresented student subgroup access. All right, there we are. We're ready for Q&A.
Start with Jason.
That was an incredibly dense and exciting presentation, and I'll disclose my bias as an engineering major and like undercover computer nerd in high school that I'm really excited about this. I'll just be brief. I thought you did a really good job of clearly articulating the time gaps. I know this has been like a theme tonight, but my guess is it's great to hear with the elementary pilot. We'll have some opportunities to do more, and my guess is we'll be hungry for even more after that. Liz, having been included as part of the Portrait of a Learner process, there was this whole like imaging the future. What is the career going to be? I guess it was a little bit post AI, but of course that's, you know, even more important now. So I couldn't agree with you more that this is really important for all of our portrait elements. So thank you.
Mika?
I agree with Jason that this has been a really detailed and thorough presentation and package of information for us to consider. My thread that I want to pull on a little bit is the middle school piloting of the, what was it, a robotics class in middle school, which is awesome. It's fantastic. Big supporter of robotics engineering. But the thing I want to talk about is if we're doing that without first fixing the underlying inequities in our structures, the fact that not all schools are getting equal bites of the apple for engineering, aren't we then in a situation where we're likely going to be exacerbating those inequities? Or are you telling me that we're going to push in that engineering pilot into those schools that are lagging?
Do you want to speak to the middle school, to work around middle school scheduling?
So in terms of the MTSS scheduling process that has begun with the math specialist, but can't really be completed until we also have the literacy specialist into which to drop in that section, that is when we can also review how much library, engineering, all of these other special area courses, like we're not there. And quite honestly, I have to ask you, we're going to need funding to do it. And we have not been able to maximize those expectations. So I don't want to put anything out there that's going to signal that we're on this, because we are only on it if we're given the funding, which is ongoing funding.
I hear you, and I wise sage words, but we are putting that out there. It's right here. And so my suggestion is, as we're putting it out there, we put on there an adjustment for the fact that there are some schools that just aren't getting at this current level the equitable rates of engineering. So if we're looking to increase anywhere, it's go there first. Go there first.
You're suggesting go to the schools where there's where there's less engineering in order to do those pilots first.
Absolutely correct. That would be what I would look to see. as if I'm you, and I'm not, but that to me feels like we're not accelerating the problem. We're not causing a bigger gap. We're hitting it and putting the thing that we're trying to do in the places to adjust for that problem, solve for that problem as we're pushing ourselves and enriching the options available to students.
I think that makes sense. And there's a limited amount of time that they have everywhere. And so if we add that in, I'm aware that as we add in a pilot of that next year, we're taking away from something else within the engineering curriculum that exists, even though it's different at the different schools. But I think it is wise to look to the schools that that don't have as much engineering time right now. My hope would actually be to pilot across all 4 schools. And that's actually adjusted since we made this presentation, because I think if what we're seeing is a lack of alignment across the 4 schools, I'm thinking that piloting just with those 4 teachers all at the same time might allow us to have richer conversations anyways. That's a little dependent on just the pilot funding coming through. We've applied for an NSF grant for that. And I think that both for the elementary and the middle school pilots that are proposed here, we're trying out something new without quite having the space or the funding to make sure that it lands, right? This third grade special is exciting. We suddenly have this new programmatic element as long as we can fund the materials for it. And that feels great. But also, we probably aren't going to land in a space where we're only offering engineering and DLCS, computer science, in 3rd grade. That doesn't make sense in the end. And so we're trying this out, and we're hoping that there are other opportunities in the future. And I want to make sure that we're piloting at the middle school level, even though the schedule doesn't quite work for us across the city, and working out some of those issues before we get all of that.
Liz, to be clear, at the middle school level, we're looking at 1 unit of robotics within the current engineering class. So it would probably be either grade 6 or 7, where all kids are actually already getting engineering, so that everyone does get that same experience.
Yes.
With that said, I am also in conversation with Day to potentially do some very small pilot in grade 8 for a term or 2 of a coding class that we can incorporate in there. Because they are going to have some elective pieces the way their schedule is working out next year. So we may have an opportunity to have some kids elect into, but that's still in the very early stages of working out for next year. So grade 8 in particular, I'd say would be a place to target because they're not getting the engineering course.
Ben?
Thank you both. This was great. I'm just 2 quick comments. One, it's odd that the experiences vary so much across the middle schools. So would love to see us bring some equity there, whether it's through the pilots or some other way. And I understand it's a complex matrix of who has say in that, but when parents hear it, it's Anna's favorite word comes up a lot, bonkers. I think that you haven't figured out how to create time in the last 2 hours, have you?
Still working on it. Thanks.
Okay. So we still need more time in the school day, seems to be the theme that's coming up. And that's going to be a very big, complicated, and expensive nut to crack. But it feels like there's so much we can do across levels if we can figure out how to crack that one. Probably not tonight.
Need some more physicists.
Linda.
I'm curious about, I guess you called it finding number 1 at the K through 5 level. If you had your dream and we were meeting finding number 1, what would that mean in terms of additional screen time for those kids?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, right? So we have done a lot of, well, I can go in so many different directions for that answer. So I think the key point is that any screen time that students are doing are really dedicated towards the standards that we have in Massachusetts, right? And so there are standards on coding and programming and engineering. Engineering doesn't need to be on a screen. It can also be hands-on with various kits and other things. So, and neither does coding always need to be actually on a screen. There's lots of
Screen-free coding.
Thank you, screen-free coding. It's getting late. My brain isn't working as fast. Screen-free coding activities, and that we have actually pushed out to teachers too in the past. So, and that's really just getting at the algorithms of coding, right? What does this mean to code, and how do you do it? So, I don't necessarily see it as a tremendous increase in time on screens, except for purposeful time with a particular purpose, right? And hitting particular standards that you may or may not need additional screen time for, depending on what exactly you're doing during that activity.
And you asked sort of about what in our dreams about what this looks like. Yeah. There's likely a screen present at points during the lesson. And probably one person out of a 3-person or 4-person group is interacting with that screen. Because if we go back to the portrait of a learner, there's a huge amount of communication that's happening on a team that's solving a problem that is not on the screen often, where one person may be controlling like a block coding scenario, and another person is changing the arms on a robot in order to correspond with what that person is coding on the screen. And they're talking to each other while they're doing it. So it looks a lot different than the screen use that students are doing at home, or even that students are doing in other subject areas, where one person might have it and there's a whole group collaborating on that screen in order to achieve some sort of goal.
Thank you. Victor?
Thank you very much. One quick question. To what extent, if at all, are things like vibe coding coming into questions? Is that way too, I mean, it's not in the standards necessarily yet, but how are we thinking about that?
Right. And there are actually places where you can point towards AI in general in the standards, right? So one of the big parts of the standards does include how humans and technology interact. And AI is definitely that overlap between humans and technology. So, one of the findings of the report does make mention of looking at what is the impact of AI on how we teach coding. It's something that I think we need to look at the high school in particular. I think some of those baseline concepts at elementary and middle probably would still happen as we would normally do it. But once you start getting into the high school, the question is when and where and how appropriate is it? Because we know you can do a lot of important things. It's also good to understand the limitations and the potential dangers if you don't understand what code is being written and what you're now implementing. So I think that has to be part of the conversation with kids, and we can't avoid it because they will find it, and they have not already.
President, we're not doing anything. It's my understanding, correct? That this exists so early. We're not doing anything explicitly with
we are
5%
not to my
yet.
knowledge at the high school level. It's possible that they are having some conversations in the high school courses already. I don't actually know that.
Fair enough. There are long-term tokenization questions that we have to figure out too. Yeah, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
But some of the vendors like Lego Education are already thinking about that, and some of the new models that they're putting out incorporate AI and.
Good. All right. Thank you. That's great. Next up, math. Curriculum adoption. We've had the presentation and we've had one set of discussions on it. So this is now a discussion hopefully leading to a vote. I know that Superintendent is hoping to get moving on some stuff.
So 2 asks in the math world. The K-8 Amplify curriculum is the first. Nothing's changed about the world since that other discussion last time. What has changed is our high school staff have all heard about the mathematics sort of middle ground that we were trying to strike with a consultant who is going to work with us to use base resources, examine the North and South resources at the high school level, and braid those together into a Newton tailored specific curriculum with the expected unit plans, assessments, both formative and summative assessments, as well as the differentiated resources to help apply the materials to all the different levels that are required in our world, meaning like accelerated versus honors versus college prep. That's a collaborative and iterative process with our department heads, our K-12 director, Jen Shore, and teacher representatives selected from North and South who would help to curate the resources, be the voice of each school, and then work with this individual to give feedback, workshop the materials back. So there would be a constant feedback loop with our folks. It does not change the pathway upgrade outline. I know, Jason, that was a question of yours. It keeps us on track. In addition, very exciting, a sort of venture capital arm of a company has also wanted to support other groups using this same consultant, creating the same materials for their own districts. So it would create a cohort style scenario. So I know you were asking questions about, like, does anyone else do this? Yes, they do. And they want to put us together in community. We're still exploring that, but the more we get into this, the more convinced we are that this is the right way, because it is the curriculum alignment, differentiation, and rigor we expect. It also is the path forward so that our high school staff are not pitted against each other, and they're not sort of battening down the hatches against a particular curriculum adoption. If you want to add anything else, you certainly can. Okay. So I'm asking for your support for the K-8 curriculum adoption of the Amplify curriculum, and the recommended, which is page 8 of your documents. If you wanted to look at the final curriculum recommendation sheet, it's a company called Coherent Math, and I would like you to I would recommend that we adopt the curated math proposal. I also sent to you, you had lots of questions about alignment and who's going to do what when. So I sent you a draft document that is still being workshopped with all of our principals and teachers, but it shows you the spreading out of all the curriculum deployments over the next, over the year, who's doing what in what grade levels. So obviously in math, grades 6 to 12, we know exactly all this stuff will be deployed. So it doesn't have bearing on this, but you were asking about UFly, which is coming up shortly. So anyway, I ask for your support on those two pieces.
Can I start with a question about, and this may involve you folks in the back, what work would the consultant do versus the work that our staff and teachers would do to develop the curriculum? Like, is the consultant doing the heavy lifting of writing or whatever, and we couldn't have our staff do that because it's just too much? It wouldn't be like a short week-long summer project or something.
So the Coherent Math representatives have a bank. They do this work all the time, so they're used to curating all these different standards and all the different activities. So they would ask questions of us in terms of, what are the things that you value? You could align it to our portrait of learner. Are you emphasizing real world applications? So they would learn about what the Newton way in terms of how we want to approach mathematic education. And then they would provide samples and give our teachers the opportunity to kind of curate different materials. And so the teachers would have, or I should say the department chairs along with the writing teams would then give her feedback as to, we like this or we don't like this. And then there would be an opportunity for them to pilot materials in their classrooms as well.
Yeah, the expectation is not that teachers are part of the writing team. It would be the building-based leaders, the department head and assistant department head and me. The teachers would be part of the vetting teams. So they would share back a unit that they've written and aligned to what we propose. The teachers try some of it, provide feedback, and then the writing team goes back and makes the adjustments. So we're not asking teachers to do the writing.
Okay. And is it true that the work of this curriculum building is more than simply aligning the two high schools? Can you describe what it is beyond alignment?
One of the things that came out of the self-study and also the work that we talked about with integrated versus traditional pathways was that the teachers don't feel it's truly an integrated program because it's made up of things that they've created, and it's hard to really think about how do I take these standards and combine them and make it real world application. So that's one of the main goals, is to make this a truly integrated program as defined by the teachers, so that it's not an algebra unit and then a geometry unit and then an algebra unit and we say, yeah, that's integrated. But how do we really truly make it fit together? So that's a big piece of it. And that writing curriculum, there's an art and a science to it. There's a coherence to it starting September to June. And it's an arc that tells a story, and it's not easy to do. So having someone who's done a lot of it who's worked with high schools before is going to be very helpful.
And do we have the quotes to know that this will fit into the $2 million of free cash that has been allocated for the math curriculum?
We do, and I'm not done negotiating yet.
All right. That's all I had. Who else? Jason?
Thanks. My questions are also dedicated to the high school because I am quite comfortable with the K through 8. There was a great discussion last time. I had similar questions to Alicia on understanding the spirit of this and what value it's giving. And if I'm playing it back, it's really reflecting the teacher voice and preference as via, I've just heard like a vetting committee as well as leadership on the writing side. And then it would give that sort of time leverage and best practices that this company sort of creates from that. That's correct. From a negotiating lens, we're naming the vendor now. Are we locking ourselves in? Is it the right time to be doing this?
To be talking about the vendor?
Yep.
Well, I didn't have your confidence last week without naming the vendor. So I'm naming the vendor and I'm saying that we're ready to roll. And there's a community of practice, which I couldn't name the vendor without telling you about the community of practice. So.
Thanks. And then I think we received feedback on, it is indeed in a tight budget. This is a free cash flow item that we already have for math curriculum. And so it makes sense to follow the teacher voice and provide this leverage and best practice via that existing free cash grant we have. Thanks.
That is my recommendation.
And once we have it, it's ours. And so if down the line there has to be modifications based on DESE recommendations, it'll be a lot easier to do so.
Thank you.
Mika? How long would this process take to create?
Well, by the end of next year.
Months.
So 10 months.
And how does that remind me of your awesome Gina curriculum schedule? Is that in alignment?
We are right on target. So this is great. This is great. We had built in some extra time too, just in case something like this happened. So we're in good shape.
Great.
All right. I move to adopt the K through 8 Amplified Desmos curriculum and the curated bespoke high school math curriculum. Is there a second? Okay, Ben. Let's go around. Ward 1.
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yep.
Ward 3.
Yes.
Ward 4.
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
Ward 6. Jonathan, Ward 6.
Yes.
Ward 7 is a yes. Ward 8.
Yes to K8.
So the motion is one.
I know,
vote.
that's why I am pausing because I wish we would split it. That's fine. Yes.
Mayor Laredo is absent, so passes 8-0 opposed, 1 absent.
Thank you all.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
Surprise for
And
this
it's hot, we're tired, so I hope we're like
Just sit
conveying
tight for a
energy,
second,
but
Gina.
This is great news.
Bye, Jen. Gina, hang for a minute. Okay, so the last order of business is we're asking for your support for the University of Florida Literacy Institute Phonics curriculum recommendation. This is where that calendar that I sent you is most helpful. You can kind of see where the district is prioritizing the deployment of that, not to overwhelm the teachers at the elementary level. So we're really tracking on that. If we need to pull back, we will come back to you and let you know when the scope, how the pace is changing, but we need this curriculum to move ahead and fill some gaps.
Great. Questions on UFly or other discussion items? Jason?
I'd asked last time about the connection to folks on the IEP who may have dyslexia and are with the specialized curriculum, and the connection that may have to foundations. And we've just heard that can be disruptive to move to UFly. And last time it was a little qualitative in terms of not really sure how many that would affect. And so I'd asked a follow-up question.
Yeah.
Do you know?
So David wasn't available today to get that data, so I will get you the answer to that question. These are fundamentally different scenarios. So students on IEPs are guaranteed whatever is on their IEP, but they don't name a specific curriculum or methodology. So if someone with dyslexia is allowed to get a certain service, they get it. Whether we're a UFly district or a foundations district, they're going to get the thing that they're supposed to have.
That makes sense. I think the specific thing, and this is just anecdote, but from special educators in the district, that there's a lot of benefit to having synchronicity between Foundations and Norton Gillingham and their experience with those students. And so I think we would lose that.
Wilson. I think you mean Wilson. So Foundations is a Wilson product.
Okay.
So I think that's what you're meaning.
Alicia, maybe you can help me.
So we've heard from a special educator who specifically was speaking of using OG with a student in pullout, and how going back and forth with Foundations with the student in the classroom, that was much easier. And then when the UFly pilot was happening, she was having to rearrange everything because it didn't align with OG. So I think it's something that would potentially work out for the student, but puts a burden on special educators to make those adaptions if they're trying to have the kid in the general ed phonics lesson and then also pull out and be able to kind of hit right where they are.
So I just, for everybody's, just not to be, I got to be precise. OG is an instructional methodology. Foundations is a Wilson product that uses OG practices and other practices. So I just want to make sure we know what we're talking about. So they're not like Mars and Venus, though. UFly also has some of the same phonological and phonemic awareness practices. So I guess I'd want to hear more from that educator about what the challenges were.
It was sequencing, entirely sequencing.
And Dr. Cloker is working very closely with special ed to make sure that those alignment issues are worked out. So it's not as if it's an island all its own. I think we're going to be very thoughtful in that.
But I'm happy to come back to you with more information.
Yeah, that would be great. I think specifically it was sequencing, the fact that it is more compressed. And then we heard something about ordering, such that if a student in their gen ed class is now in the UFly ordering, they're way ahead and in a different order than they would have been before, and that there's something lost there. So my guess was it's a decent number of students that could be affected there. If that's not the case, then it's much easier to manage by exception. But I'm glad that we're looking into it. And again, it was very exciting to see the impact on the majority of kids who piloted this and the impressions of the teachers.
Anybody else? No? Okay. You have a question? Go ahead.
No, follow question.
Oh, yes, we can. I actually had one comment, and I wonder if we can report out on this at some point, but my main reservation is the burden for this is K-2 teachers, which are our teachers who are also doing the EL heavy lifting. And I feel like, up until hopefully now, they have had the least amount of planning minutes. And so that is my main concern. If this ends up being another, piece of overwhelm, we just have to be able to be reactive to that, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
I hope we would be. Okay. Do you want to,
Yep.
would you like to make a motion?
Make the motion to approve the UFly recommendation as proposed by the superintendent.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Oh,
Bless you.
I'll go with Linda on that one. All right.
Linda.
All right. Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yep.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes, ma'am.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 6,
Yes.
Ward 7 is a yes, Ward 8.
Yes.
Mayor Laredo is absent, passes 8-0 to 1 absent.
Thank you all. Appreciate you all. Thank you.
All right. Before we adjourn, I do want to say one thing, which is that I should have said this during school choice. Our NTA partners conducted a survey of educators asking them, they provided a little bit different framing of the question than we had. They included a zoom out and sort of impact of school choice to other school districts, sending school districts. It was great. We had 312 responses, which I would venture to guess is the most educator feedback we've ever had on this topic. So it's fantastic. And generally the educators were not in favor of school choice. So we had 31% or 98 votes strongly opposing, 32% opposed, and then neutral 19%, and a combined of about 16.5% that would support it or partially support it. So they are in line with our vote tonight.
And that's posted publicly.
It is posted publicly in the materials now, yes. And huge thank you to Ryan and Mike for running that survey. We're adjourned.
Good night.
Jason, I also see all these questions about the percentage of time and all that, like, okay, you're okay?